Welcome to episode number 104 of Killer POV. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rob G, from Icons of Fright. With me, bopping his head.
Those were some sweet tunes.
To those sweet tunes.
I'd never noticed that before. Like it came out of the ether.
Is Elric Kane, Inside Horror.
Yep.
Jump Cut Proprietor.
Yep.
Cinema Lover.
And formerly producer of This Week in Horror. I hate that you always lose that one, man.
This Week
that
in
means
Horror.
a lot to me, man.
Yeah.
Home is where the horror is.
Home is where
producer.
the horror.
Yeah. It's way back.
And Rebekah McKendry from Fangoria magazine.
Hello. How are you doing?
Magazine.
And Gore Zone. Yeah.
And I don't know.
I got something else.
Cover
Dead
to
Right
cover.
Horror Trivia.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Mother and lover.
That's
to
me.
someone.
That sums me up. To someone. Someone out there. I will mother.
Someone who's definitely not listening.
I'm glad. I'm glad with all the feedback we got for last week, and it was great that not only were we able to get the whole crew from Mad Men on the show, but that we were able to record with Bekah for a little bit beforehand.
Yeah.
So you were not absent from the episode. We got the first half in there.
I had people coming up to me at the booth and telling me about the Mad Men episode, and I was like, guys, I haven't listened to anything.
Yeah.
And so
Also, I saw
was
tweets
really
saying
bummed.
that we were performing.
We were surprised.
And me and you were here, and I'm like, what?
I told them like 2 weeks ago that you guys wouldn't be joining us, and apparently they had already made the program by then.
bummer.
So like when I'm flipping through the program, I'm like, oh look, it's Rob and Elric, and they're not here.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
POV fans from Phoenix, but
I will be getting them there next year if I have to like rent a U-Haul and throw them in the back.
Money, baby.
There will be tied up and gagging. Even if you guys come willingly, we're still going like that.
If we could afford it, we would have been.
I'll go
there.
anywhere for money.
Yeah.
Call me Eric Roberts.
I love that. Yeah. So we have a lot of ground to cover and a lot of things I wanted to talk about, a lot of movies and subjects and things like that. I just wanted to kick it off right off the bat that in between our last episode and this one, Betsy Palmer, better known as Mrs. Voorhees from the original Friday the 13th, has passed. Really sad to hear the news. It's weird for me for a lot of reasons. The first thing that struck me was, I've met her several times over the years, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person. And anybody listening that ever met her at a convention knows how great she was with the fans. This Friday the 13th was not she has a huge career before that.
Yeah, she did a lot of soaps, right?
A lot, soaps, a lot of films that she did. I'm going to mention some of them at the end of this, but a huge career, and she just did Friday the 13th to pay for her car. Like that was her whole. She always tells that story that they offered her $10,000 and she had a car she wanted for $9,999.
You can't be too picky when you have really hairy palms.
Well, that's Tasso. That's Tom Savini's makeup guy.
I know. I always thought that was pretty
not
funny.
really her hairy palms. But yes, but the point being is, I've known her over the years, and she was one of the very first interviews on Icons of Fright 11 years ago. So we've gotten to that point now where it's like, man, when we're losing people from the beginning of that venture that I started. So that's kind of sad. And then I interviewed her for His Name is Jason, the documentary. I totally forgot that there was, because the first couple of films were filmed on the East Coast and in New York and kind of like upstate and stuff like that. There's still a lot of alumni from the films that were out in New York, and I was living there at the time, so they had asked me to do those interviews. And I'll never forget it. It was like a summer afternoon. We had a studio booked, and she's the first person to show up. It's like 80 degrees out, and here's this 80-year-old woman that shows up in like hot leather pants.
Wow!
Here's like, because she was a feisty woman that had no problem letting you know that she betted James Dean. That usually always came up right away.
Yep.
Wow!
And you're like, oh, all right, well, it's going to be one of these conversations. Great,
cool.
But she was always very open and honest like that. And again, she only needed to be there for her interview. But what was cool was she stayed with us the whole afternoon. She met people that were in parts 2 and stuff. That she'd never actually met. And
did she watch the others? Do you think any of the others?
No, there's no way.
I don't think so.
There's no way. But she, she still argues that she was not in 2, even though she clearly is.
Right.
And I think they shot footage for her in 2. Like, I think they brought her back and shot. They didn't reuse footage from 1, but she didn't remember for sure. She's like, no, I'm only in 1. It's like, okay. But no, she was a really sweet, lovely woman. I found pictures from that His Name is Jason shoot and posted some of them. So really sad that she's gone.
But 88 is a champion. You know, when whenever I see breaking news, 88-year-old dies, any 88-year-old, I'm like, hey, it's not that breaking, and it's awesome for them.
That's the good thing. And she was doing
years.
Conventions like right up to the end.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of people got to know her and appreciate her. And again, you should go back to those early films. There's one from when I interviewed her for Icons, I went and watched all her non-genre stuff too. And she'd done a comedy called Mr. Roberts with Henry Fonda, James Cagney, Jack Lemmon. And I mean, she was a fox.
Oh, really?
Fox
wow. Okay, I got to Google young Betsy Palmer.
She also did, I'll show you a picture because I posted one. She also did a film.
Oh, that was her? I saw that picture you put up earlier and I didn't even make the connection. I was like, oh, Rob's got another hottie he's putting up.
Betsy Palmer.
I mean, that's her and Mr. Roberts right there on the
cool.
Wow.
Right. And she did a movie. She did a movie, a Western called The Tin Star with Anthony Perkins, which is kind of an interesting connection there. So, I advise you if you like to dabble outside of the genre, it'd be good to celebrate her early work because she was a beautiful, gorgeous woman, and it's fun seeing her in those old movies. So,
and also now you've revealed that Jason's father could be James Dean. Now that would be a twist.
Now we have made some deep knowledge.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah. That's true. So that's that. Also, another tribute. We lost Eric Caidin.
Yeah.
I believe that's how you say his name. The owner of the Hollywood Book and Poster out here in Hollywood. They were actually they shut it. They closed down their location in Hollywood, and they were planning to open up in Burbank.
I just passed it. It's this big empty store with the sign on the front saying opening soon.
Oh man, and that,
so I
was so excited about that.
Yeah, Eric's kind of legendary in this industry. Just if you were ever looking for anything rare or just old, or I'm looking for a book on Russian cinema from the 60s, it would be in that shop.
So many people have those stories of like when they moved here, he was the first person they kind of bought stuff from.
I knew him back from the Fango. He was like a longtime advertiser in Fango, and he did all of the conventions, and it was always like it didn't matter where we were, Eric was there, and he would bring along these giant like poster binders, like when you were a kid and you used to go in the poster store at the mall, he would be carting those along with him and have like a cart of them.
I mean he owned a lot of film prints, but primarily, I mean, that was the good thing about Hollywood Book and Posters. They like, when movies get made, there's a publicity department behind it, and they usually have people like on-set photographers and things like that. So they always the studio's always producing a lot of this material for promotional purposes, which for us as kids growing up, we don't really get to see that material. That's usually sent to like newspapers and magazines and stuff like that, like to Fango.
Fango, we have a storeroom. We literally have a warehouse of A to Z, just every film that's come out, and we save every bit of press material from it. So it's massive.
So Eric sold those 8x10s and those materials at his place. The funny story that I can reveal now. I mean, and to be clear, I didn't really know him personally. I knew him from his shop. Right. He co-hosted the Grindhouse Film Festival nights. Like,
that's all I knew him from.
Tuesday nights, he would co-host it with Brian Quinn at the New Beverly, and
always give away good prizes.
Usually, I think supplied the prints a lot of the time.
I think a lot of the times
there was collection. But when I did when I first moved to town, I was looking to license photographs for the Psycho movies. Universal didn't really help me at all. I bought all my 8x10s from him. So all the 8x10s, because when you're a little independent filmmaker and you're trying to license materials from a major studio, and we could even ask Scream Factory when they come in later, they don't really care. They don't pay attention to you. It could take months and months and months.
It's weird because
for your request, and it's like, you know what? I don't have 5 months. I need this still to edit the scene. So I just went and bought it and scanned it from his place.
And it's really weird because you would think that they would want the press, but we run into the same thing with articles where, like, we're doing an article on Prom Night 2. You think that someone might want to get press for an old movie, but they don't have time.
It's no different than them not being willing to sub-license their films. Sometimes, and they're so big they don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers don't care if you see all their films.
Yeah,
they have so many of them. It's a shame. It's a real shame.
Big mega movie of the summer, whatever it is. Yeah. But anyway, so they did for Eric. They did a tribute earlier this week at the New Beverly, where they were showing 2 of his prints. I only stayed for the first movie, which is Tintorera, the tiger shark movie.
The shark movie.
I'll get into that in a second. But it was great, man. I kind of poked my head in the front because obviously they were doing a 2-hour ceremony where people can get up and talk and share stories about him, and then they were going to show the movies, Tintorera, which was his print, and that they already booked. They were like, let's show the movies in his honor, and it was free admission. So they're like, you know what, anybody can show up and come in. But I got there a little early. I initially felt like I didn't know him well enough to be part of the tribute. But I was out front and I bumped into David Dakota, one of our previous guests. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And David said, he's like, hey man, go and poke your head in there, man. It's good. It's a good thing. And I did. And I saw, I'm sitting there and I see, Sid Haig said a few words. Sybil Danning was there. Mm-hmm. Bill Lustig was in the corner. I saw Charles De Lauzarico was sitting a few rows ahead of me. And everybody got up and told amazing stories. Mm-hmm. It was a good celebration of a fellow. I felt like I knew him so much more because, we all share this love of movies in the cinema, and you get to hear when you hear what people loved and what they celebrated and stuff. It I don't know. It makes you feel maybe we're not all that different. Yeah. And I think that's what makes us live on, these stories. Yeah. Being able to share stories about each other. So that was a really great tribute, and I believe Brian Quinn said that he's going to do. Every year for his birthday, which I believe is in December, he's going to do a full-on festival for him in his honor, some of his favorite movies all day long.
Cool.
That's great.
We can look forward to that later in the year. But really quick, Tintorera. I have seen this movie before. I don't know if either of you have.
I have a passion for shark movies. So I've seen most of them.
I didn't remember it until the moment it started because it is the weirdest bromance love triangle film that it's this character Steve played by Hugo Stiltz, however you want to say his name, and he looks kind of like the guy that does the parody of Sean Connery on Saturday Night Live for Jeopardy. He looks like a young version of that guy, of the guy that's parodying Sean Connery. But it's like him, and he beds this girl in the beginning, and then there's this suave Mexican guy named Miguel who then becomes she leaves him and ends up with Miguel, and then she gets eaten by a shark, and they both just forget about her and become total bros. And they go and they pick up two girls, and then they're trading the girls, and then they decide I'm going to teach you how to hunt sharks. You're just this movie is insane. It is the first act.
What country is this from?
It's Spanish, right?
It's Spanish. Yeah, it was a Spanish-made film.
Actually, it's Mexican, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I think both films they showed last night were Mexican. That was the theme. But this is a crazy movie. And then at one point, they both end up betting this British girl played by Susan George, and they just both decide to be her boyfriend.
Does she say bastard? Bastard.
No. And then later, Priscilla Barnes shows up, from Three's Company. Uh-huh. So it's a crazy. Really funny movie. The only weird thing that I didn't remember is they really kill some sharks in this movie.
It's stock footage of sharks, right? But it
looks like they're getting in there and killing them.
Oh, I also remember a lot of skinny dipping in this one.
Yes, there's a lot of nudity.
At least 3 scenes of skinny dipping. It's been a couple of years, but.
Yeah, maybe more, way more than that.
That's all we do. We don't go normal swimming. We just go skinny dipping.
I just watched it. I was like, I don't know if there's ever been a more romantic movie.
That's awesome. You're going to like the new...
Than Steve and Miguel sharing women. As they do.
The new jump cut top 5 is Jaws ripoffs, and it's guest Steven Scarlatta because his obsession is shark ripoffs of Jaws. So I asked him today. It's going to be up tomorrow.
Is Cruel Jaws on there? Because
number 1.
Okay, that's
his all-time favorite. Because I kept saying, what about Last Shark? He's like, ever since I saw Cruel Jaws, where they just sample Last Shark and make a better movie by using it. They also put Star Wars theme music under it.
Yeah,
it's
hilarious.
I've got to see that film. I haven't seen it.
It's amazing, and they just steal. It's the whole movie is just borrowed, and it's a better movie than a lot of the ones it stole from.
Yeah, I need to see that. But
I think I have a copy of it.
So why don't we talk about one that all 3 of us saw?
Yes,
Bekah.
Yeah, you set it up. Rodney Ascher, who was a guest here on episode Beep. Fill in and editing.
On. Yeah, it was pretty early on.
Room 237.
Which was very divisive amongst everyone, not just this room, but I loved it. I thought it was fascinating about obsession in movies. But this is a very different movie. What's it is.
We checked out The Nightmare, which is going to be opening very soon.
Today. It opens on the day that this lands,
it opens
Friday.
Today.
Oh, yeah, June 5th.
And it's doing a limited theatrical, so I know it's opening here in LA, and I know it's doing a couple of other cities. And then I think it'll do VOD shortly thereafter. But yeah, so The Nightmare is, it's about something that we've discussed on this show before, the idea of sleep paralysis. And we've talked about this briefly before, about how it's the concept that
last episode.
Yeah, last episode. You're right. When you fall
Apparently
asleep,
you guys interrupted me, which I'm going to get you back for. By interrupting you.
Damn.
Continue, Bekah.
But when you fall asleep, it's the idea that your body becomes paralyzed, because that happens normally so that you're not like acting out your dreams. But while you are paralyzed, your brain and consciousness still stay awake. So even though that you are paralyzed and can't move, your brain is still completely awake. But certain elements of dreams and dream logic kind of bleed over into your conscious.
Maybe you're giving it a scientific.
I read the Wikipedia page.
Exactly, and some of the characters in this don't believe that.
Yeah, you have to explain.
They're all very different beliefs.
The movie is 8 people. It's
8 people who suffer through very bad versions throughout their life of sleep paralysis, very different versions, and some overlap. And also the director Rodney Ascher also halfway through just chimes in. Yeah, I had a couple. It obviously wasn't something that plagued him his whole life like some of these guys. I mean, some of them are. It's disturbing because how bad it's been for some of the people's lives.
Like where they think they're going crazy and they tell people about it, and they're like, doctors think they're going crazy and have them do CAT scans and things like that and say that there's something physically wrong with them or their mental capacities.
But the format of the movie is what is so interesting because it's a film built around interviews, reenactments, and then really interesting like nightmares, basically like horror movie nightmares. And then also occasionally they break the fourth wall and like show the person who's going to be the monster in the scene putting on the cloak. And it's a really interesting documentary format.
Yeah, it is.
I thought stylistically it was, not that I was one of those people that didn't really like Room 237, and it's not Rodney's abilities as a filmmaker. It's just the people were a little too weird and out there with their theories.
It's a weird see that.
Yeah. But in terms of directing ability, I mean, miles above the recreations, the way that everything was kind of put together. I had mixed feelings about the film because obviously this is something that I suffer from. And so the first half, I was almost not vibing on it at all because it was like, I don't buy any of this stuff, or I don't buy this story, or whatever. But it's really fascinating because obviously my experiences are not nearly as severe as theirs. I mean, I talked about it last week because I just suffered from it again for the first time in a long time. And then watching the movie, certain people, because they're really weird variations. They all have weird variations of it.
Like some see the old woman, the old hag syndrome is what it's called.
Barely in the movie.
Yeah,
though.
it's not
Barely
discussed
anybody.
much. But the one that's like most predominant in the movie is the shadow men. And that's the one that I'd heard the most about, which is right as you're falling asleep, you see these kind of shadowy beings, or some described them as television static.
Somebody described
that
the darkness is alive and that things are alive in the shadow. That's the closest I've had. I don't think I ever had the paralysis. I definitely had the recurring nightmare when I was really young, like 4 or 5, and then again when I was like 13. So I could identify with that element of it. But I think that it really channeled something. It felt like they made something that's really genuinely creepy for people who don't get creeped out by movies anymore because it's real life. It doesn't mean what's happening to them is supernatural, but it's really happening to them. Right. Whether it's their brains, whether it's supernatural, whether it's ghost residue of electricity, we don't know. And I find that to be there's one sequence right in the middle with a cat. And the story about the cat, and there's a cat and a slender man, I was like, man, that's actually pretty terrifying.
Mine was the cell phone. The guy who got the cell phone call and thought it was real, and then it turned out that he was still in whatever state it is. That one kind of messed me up. And the fact that they talk about, and they talked about this from the beginning, how if you talk about it and discuss it with somebody, it actually makes it worse. Yeah. And so I was like, oh God, I'm going to have it tonight. So I actually went to bed last night thinking about it.
Well, they did kind of discuss transference with some of the characters.
Yeah, about how if someone tells you about it, you can get it.
Power of thought, though.
Not that I want to jinx myself, but I haven't had it since I discussed it last week. But no, it's amazing because again, I was going through the first half thinking like, whatever. I don't know how I feel about any of this, or these sound so far fetched, I don't believe them. But some of them triggered. Like I said, I thought I only suffered it once in the last couple of years, but then immediately hearing some of them triggered memories that I was like, oh wait, that happened to me last year or several months ago. Like the one in particular was the, and this is the one that I primarily suffer from. As far back as I can remember, I don't see anything, but there was a girl explaining how she'd sleep on her side and hear something right up in her ear, like somebody whispering or like talking right, like it's as if somebody's right in your ear saying something, screaming, whatever. And the problem is, if that happened in real life, you want to turn and look. And it's the idea of being incapable of looking because you're paralyzed. Like that triggered a memory that I had that very recently where it was like, oh yes, I heard something in my ear. and I wanted so badly to look, but I just couldn't move my head. So it's interesting what it triggers in you if you've experienced any of this phenomenon.
I get the auditory rumbling, but I always think for some reason that it's my own heartbeat. But like as I'm falling asleep, and this happens a lot, I never feel like I'm incapacitated, but I hear what I can only describe as kind of like an engine roaring. And it's definitely got like a cycle to it, like you hear a dryer. So when they were talking about how they have the auditory stuff, I was like, yeah, wow, I always get that sound. And for some reason, it's just for me in the silence of my room, I always think it's my heartbeat. But I had a really creepy thing happen at Phoenix Comic-Con, which then I started thinking about when they were talking about things moving in the dark. So while I was at Phoenix, the temperature in Phoenix was 117. I actually posted up a picture of my Instagram of my car thermostat set 117 in the parking lot outside of the con. And that night, all of downtown Phoenix lost power at like 9:30. And this includes the hotel. And I was on like the 6th floor of the hotel. You have never seen blackness until the entire town loses power and you're sitting in the middle of a hotel room. And it was so creepy that I ended up like everyone in the hotel, I guess, got kind of freaked out because we were all just sitting in pure blackness. And we had to prop open our doors because if your door closed, you couldn't get it back open because there are all those card locks. So everyone propped open their doors and sat out in the hallway and talked in the dark with like our cell phones because it was so creepy just to sit in the hotel room and pitch black by yourself.
Yeah.
It was really fun. But at the same time, I mean, the lights stayed out till like 3 a.m. And I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to stumble my way back in my room at like 2. But there were people who stayed out there like the entire
like you hadn't seen The Nightmare yet.
Yeah, that's what killed me because when they started talking about people moving in the dark, when I was sitting in the room in pitch blackness with just my cell phone, I was seeing things move in my periphery just because if you're staring into blackness for that long, you're going to start seeing shadows move. And actually, it was
the line. No, the creepiest part was the line where kid's watching. He's a little kid and he's watching TV, and the guy goes, he talks to him. The newscaster talks to him, and then says, "And we will be back."
Yeah,
he says to the kid, like, "We will be coming back for you." And it was just like, oh, as a kid. But I thought it was a really interesting film, and I really liked it aesthetically. I liked the score. I like that he made a horror film out of a documentary.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. It's really
chilling.
it's creeping, and I think a lot of you will enjoy it. I think it's a great VOD movie. Yeah. Like, it doesn't feel like it needs theatrical. If you can see it theatrically, that's great, but it really feels like it'll be fine watching it that way. And I think you'll think a lot about it. It gives you a lot of ideas. You just about how little we know. I think about how little science knows about certain topics.
It was fascinating to see how everyone had similar stories. They all talked about the energy that they felt as they were falling asleep, and a lot of them had the auditory cues, and then all sharing the kind of shadow men, what happens from that point.
Yeah, and Freddy, the origins of Freddy.
Yeah, saying
coming
that
from some of that. Yeah.
Coming out of this, because Freddy was genuinely created because Wes read a story about a man who said that someone was stalking him in his dreams trying to kill him. And then when you're hearing these stories about these beings that are stalking them in their dreams, doing sinister things, it just suddenly made sense.
Yeah. No, I think it's coming out this Friday.
Oh, Insidious too. They talk about how it links into Insidious.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, ideas of the further.
I didn't put it together until they discussed it. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, what else did you guys see?
I was at Phoenix, so I saw a lot of panels and a lot of really cool Killer POV fans.
Nice.
And they brought me Twizzlers, and it was kind of kick-ass.
I saw Secret 16. We did the Ruggero Deodato's film he made just before Cannibal Holocaust with all the animal cruelty cut out of it. It was called The Last Cannibal. And I'm very resistant to cannibal films. Jungle Holocaust is not a movie you want to repeat, but it's an experience that really worked for me. When I saw it, it blew me away. But this was a fun movie, man. It was like an adventure. It is more about people trying to escape from the cannibals after they've crash landed, but it's really out there. I mean, and like you were just talking about bromance, it's like the same kind of thing where you have two guys and the hot woman that one of them's been with, the cannibal, they're escaping, and then once she's like killed, they're like, all right, whatever, and they just keep going. And you realize just how it is kind of misogynist, but it's a fun movie. Look, cannibal films will never be my favorite, but it reminds me Deodato is actually a really good technician. He's a good filmmaker. Like, even though the material might be kind of silly, he's actually there's things in that film that actually felt quite advanced. So you could see the groundwork. The cannibals look very similar to Holocaust. It feels real. It definitely feels real, but it's more fun. So this is the big one. So we talk about this a lot. We can't have all seen all the big movies, right? Mm-hmm. I realized there was a major black hole of a movie I hadn't seen when I was talking to Dick Renner recently, and we were talking about our favorite movie of the both of our favorite movie of the 2000s was House of the Devil, and my other one's Descent. His other one is a movie that I couldn't even believe I hadn't seen because I've seen all the director's other movies. I'd never seen May.
Wow.
I borrowed your May.
I can't believe
and
that.
I think and I'll tell you why. It's funny. I'd seen The Woods already. Maybe I got around to May later. But I saw a trailer that I thought it was a high school movie for some reason back in the thing. And so I had this mismemory of her being in school and just, it felt like, I've seen this before. And for whatever reason, I didn't watch it. And then I watched it now, and it's definitely like top 10 of that decade kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Such a great movie.
Yeah.
So it's a good movie. Take it out of the horror genre. Still great movie. Doesn't matter what it is, just a great
and one of those
constructed
performances, like we talked about the girl from Starry Eyes. It's like you just this girl came out of nowhere. You're like, who the hell is she?
Yeah,
and
Sister's great too, though. I mean, it's just so it's funny because because we were talking, me and you were talking about like now that I've seen May, I'm like, oh, I would have told me, oh, you're gonna love May. That's your kind of movie. Just like we were talking about Demon Knight. That's going to be one when we have these funny chinks in our armor that you'd be surprised because we do watch so many obscure ones. Sometimes we miss the big ones. So that was a big one for me, and I really loved it.
You should also watch the follow-up movie, Roman.
Okay,
which Angela Bettis directed and Lucky McKee stars in.
Because it's the reverse.
But is it as good?
It's not as good as May, but it's worth a look. It's interesting.
The funny thing is, May is, I mean, I hate to say it, but Lucky May is so much better than the films he's made since. And I mean, The Woman's a really interesting movie, but none of them have quite hit the way May does. So I wonder what that is. It's maybe the scale is so micro and so focused on this one person, but it's such a good movie. So thank you, Dick Rinnert, for reminding me to go back. And also, Dick lent me a film by Juan Ortiz. It's made on an iPhone, and it was doing festival rounds, a feature called Jennifer Help Us. And it's about 69 minutes, 70 minutes. And it's something he saw in a dark theater, like, at one of these fests that his short was at, and was like, oh shit, this is pretty great. It's the visual storytelling in it. Those sequences that are just visual are really creepy and effective. Some of the dramatic sequences maybe don't quite work because it's three teen girls abduct another girl from school, take her to the local house that no one wants to go near because a woman had committed suicide and her kid had disappeared. It's got a lore about it. Beautiful house. But the iPhone shooting style, basically the way they've filtered it, looks exactly like Super 8, and it really works. I think aesthetically it's a really strong little film, but Dick said that he believes that this is a friend of Jeremy Gardner's from when they were like kids or something.
Oh, wow.
So that could be disproved.
Is it out on DVD or what?
He gave me a DVD that might have been maybe given to him by the director. I'm not sure. So I'll look into it.
To look it up.
But if for people looking for like voices that are emerging, you can't get any better than somebody who made it on their phone. It was an iPhone 4, and it looks good enough for me to have sat there and watched 70 minutes of it. Let me put it that way.
Wow.
And the sequences that are good they're just like a creepy person in a mask walking around this big house. And those scenes really work for me. When people are, talking to each other, you're like, it's not bad. But it's, not quite me. But that was pretty interesting film. So yeah, that's what I caught up on. But May is a biggie for me.
That's
I gotta say.
Nice.
I love it.
I'm glad you finally got to check that one out.
Is that on Blu-ray?
No, not yet.
No, I don't think it is.
Maybe we could ask somebody.
Yeah,
if they would
somebody we could check with. I'll jot that one down.
Okay, yeah.
All righty, so let's bring our guests on. Okay, so we're pretty excited because we have not had these guests on for quite a while. It's been at least over a year.
We've never had a guest come back 3 times.
3 times?
They're kind of just hosts at this point, really, guys. Yeah.
It's an open door co-hosting policy with them. And the thing is, every time they're on, you guys listening out there seem to love it. So we're happy to welcome back to the show from Scream Factory, Jeff Nelson and Cliff MacMillan.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Yeah.
Glad to be back.
All righty.
It's been a while.
There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of things that have happened since the last time you guys on. And I guess let me start with a few things that I wish I had more time to listen to your last episode, but I just kind of skimmed through it really quickly. And to me, the biggest news was you guys came on right before both Halloween, the box that was going to come out, and Nightbreed.
Right.
And I, as a fan, and again, I'm not just saying this because you're both here, but there was just one night that I'm sitting in my living room, and I've got a nice giant TV, Blu-ray setup or whatever, and I watched back to back. I watched the Halloween 6 producer's cut and the Nightbreed director's cut, and I'm sitting there like, I can't believe I live in a world where I can see like decent non-bootleg versions of these movies. Like Nightbreed was finished. Like Doug Bradley redid his dialogue. Like it was scored and everything. It was like a finished movie that I'd only read about a decade earlier or whatever. And I just have to commend you for the fact that I'm sure fans have their nitpicks about things, but the fact that Halloween 6 and Nightbreed were like saved and restored, it needs to be applauded. So congratulations on those releases.
Thank you.
For starters.
Thank you.
You know, Cliff gets a good credit here for both of those releases. As just far as, you know, Cliff's is involved in the negotiation and the acquiring of titles. And believe me, last year when Halloween, the collection was a possible reality, I'm like, yeah, right. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. And then it started becoming a reality. I'm like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. And it did. We pulled it off.
It was a lot of work.
They were both at the same time on top of releases like Phantom of the Paradise, Motel Hell, Vincent Price 2, like it was insane last year.
I have watched your Phantom of the Paradise Blue more than any other film this year. It's like my favorite film to fall asleep to now. I love that one.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That was I think it was one of maybe our first 2 discs. Was it on that one I think?
Yeah, I think so.
It was a lot on that one. But the Nightbreed thing was really came off great. We were fortunate that there was material in the Warner vaults, Morgan Creek, to make that.
I mean, everybody said it didn't exist. And, you know, with some help at Warner Brothers, we found the palette. That was all of the film elements. And
was it because you had someone friendly inside, or was it?
No.
Okay. So it's just hard work on your part.
We didn't know what was going to be on the palette. So I remember the first night we were sitting in the telecine room and we put up the first reel, and, you know, my mouth just jaw hit the table. I mean, it was like, we did find it.
Yeah.
So,
and you guys were ready to make like a version of the Cabal cut because that's all you
it
thought.
was. I got to tell you, when we announced this title in 2 summers ago at Comic-Con, after we announced it, I was like, what did we just get ourselves into? Because I knew what we had was the VHS stuff and the footage, and we didn't have the theatrical cut locked at the time.
Weird dubbing. Well, there's dubbing in the final, but the dubbing wasn't in the
I just was kind of like, oh my God. And so thankfully, sort of the crazy, you know, Clive Barker universe came together and with our efforts, and that happened to materialize. It really was sort of a once in a lifetime type of thing. And then the Halloween set, just going back to that, to have, 4 studios come together basically.
Wow.
And then, if you count Trancas, I guess 5 sort of, but just to have so many people come together and pull this off, just shocking.
You know, we were talking before during our intro about how some of the studios, when we come to them with tiny things, like we're looking for pictures for Fango or for a small documentary, some of the studios just kind of write us off. Like, we don't have time for that. We are a big studio. Do you guys encounter that? Or are some of the studios more like welcoming for you guys?
Well, I think, you know, some studios have better archive. I mean, when we did Nightbreed, Morgan Creek, who was just an amazing partner, I mean, they just shipped me this box, and it was just thousands of photographs from the film, from the set, behind the scenes, photo shoots they did. Some studios don't have as much in their vault. And, you know, a lot of it is that nobody sat there and scanned every still into the, you know. So sometimes, like MGM has been great. Like, if they can't find anything in their database, they'll go search for more. And so, yeah, I mean, it just depends on the studio, really. Yeah.
I mean, it was funny. We had William Malone on a few weeks ago, and he was telling us, because he's got an amazing personal collection of like props and stuff, and he had something from Alien. What was it? The space jockey.
He's got
model?
the space jockey model, yeah.
And he got it because a friend of his told him that Fox didn't pay their warehouse.
I think it was also when MGM was going under.
Wow. Yeah.
We're gonna throw all this stuff out. Do you want to take a look? It's like, you know, so some studios just lose a lot of this material.
Yeah.
There's lots of films that are lost because the lab that was holding the elements couldn't find whoever owned the movie, and the stuff just got thrown away.
And that's something that's something the owner of Something Weird Video would do. He would buy those places to save them, and he saved like hundreds of movies. Not all good.
No.
Salt flats of whatever. That movie.
But Mike was a great guy.
No, really a patron
sad to lose him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we went to his memorial last year at Monsterpalooza, and it was just
That's great.
Yeah, it's just it's cool. It's kindred spirits. People who really love this stuff and actually do something about it. It's inspired.
I loved sitting and talking to him. He was so fun to talk to.
Yeah,
when you were on last, I'm going to put Cliff on the spot for 2 seconds. And you guys announced Halloween. When we were saying, how difficult was it to get that? And you're like, it wasn't difficult. I was asking about something else in Miramax, and I just happened to ask about Halloween. So did that other thing you were inquiring? Because I'm trying to think if there were any other Miramax titles that you guys ended up putting out since then.
No,
or if that's still
we didn't.
The Miramax library is now with Lionsgate, the whole library. Part of it was at Echo Bridge, and then, then it all went to Lionsgate. So unfortunately, there's nothing else that we can go after, but I know what you're talking about. And we just couldn't make it work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It was more studios than the Halloween box set was. So it was gonna, it was too much work.
Okay.
Yeah, too bad about Lionsgate. We one of these days hope that something will budge, because they just have so much content there that we get requests for daily. I mean, I know I see it on the Facebook page every single day.
What's the most requested thing from something, just out of curiosity, though?
From Lionsgate, we get Waxworks a lot.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Get if Alligator is still with Lionsgate, we get that.
Yeah.
We get Dead Alive, I think, is with Lionsgate, I believe.
They did a decent Blu-ray.
Yeah, I have a Blu-ray of that one.
Do you think that one?
No, actually, it went back to Peter Jackson.
That went back to Peter Jackson. Okay, we
Wingnut.
get that.
Wingnut.
We get we get a lot of
talk to them all the time.
We get a lot of requests for Studio Canal titles that are with Lionsgate. That includes Road Games.
Big fan.
I think Fear No Evil is part of Studio Canal. And with that would be movies like The Seduction and Superstition and some other things too. There's more, but I mean, it's just a lot of times we're like, sorry, it's with Lions. Oh, the Blood Diner's coming out. I heard through another. Oh no, it's overseas.
No,
it's overseas.
Yeah.
We get that.
Is it easy? And this is probably something that we should have asked you a long time ago. But when I see, say, all these films Arrow UK has been putting out, and it crosses all the different,
they make them
boundaries.
region free.
Some of them. Some.
Are they
Very
privy to the same laws, held to the same laws you guys, and some of the same restrictions you guys are in the States? No,
not when it comes to music clearance.
Okay,
it's much easier to do over there. It's very hard to clear music here.
Yeah, it just seems like it just seems so much easier, maybe for what.
I mean, we had announced a TV show called Werewolf.
We talked about that a lot on here.
We still get requests for it. Yeah,
but there were 2 songs that we couldn't clear, and the show was, I wouldn't say it was so old, but nobody had held onto the stems. So we couldn't replace the song without just cutting out all the dialogue. So there was no way we were going to release something like that.
Right.
So we never released it, but
But whereas a company in the UK might be able to do that.
Yes.
That's interesting.
It would be easier for them to do it,
So bizarre. Interesting.
Well, we shall see. So why don't we do, I know that you guys wanted to talk about a lot of things. Maybe, do you have any comments on some of the controversies regarding both Halloween and Nightbreed? Because there's a lot of things that I know you guys did your best to rectify the Halloween 4 situation.
Right.
Which I know, I remember when I popped it in and immediately became aware that it was very out of sync from the second half fourth. So
that was an unfortunate, thing that happened right after we streeted, and then we suddenly were like, "What's going on here?" It's going to be tricky to kind of, diplomatically talk about it here like this, but we worked with Anchor Bay. We talked with them a lot about it at length. We certainly addressed it very quickly to fans, because that's sort of how we are as a company. And, we got it rectified with a replacement program. But it was really unfortunate, because to go through all of the hurdles and steps to get to this completed box set and to have it go out, and there was a hitch to it, it was disappointing for us.
Yeah.
For sure. But we survived it. We've moved on. With Nightbreed, we had some controversies, we had a few. There was, first of all, when we announced that we had 2 releases, and the limited edition one being numbered to 5,000 at a higher price point than we've normally put up, it was met with equal excitement, but also equal $80, 5,000 units. How could you, just kind of turned into a little bit of that. And then,
I mean, if they only knew the price tag to do the restoration,
and Cliff is
I'm
right.
lucky I didn't get fired.
I'm saying Cliff is absolutely right. The amount of money that was spent on restoring, we contemplated $100 plus on it because in order to, again, we're a business at the end of the day, we need to make a profit. But thankfully it paid off. And also thankfully, because of the demand was so high for that limited edition, we were able to go back to Warner Brothers and work out a deal where we could add on an additional 5,000 on that limited set to get that theatrical cut. That was met with equal excitement and equal, you're devaluing the first 5,000. It was like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Now I can't sell it on eBay for $500.
Right. It's like it turned into a thing there. And then everything after that seemed to be fine. Unfortunately, our e-commerce site had some hiccups with some delivery issues. With a warehouse that we're still actually looking into and making some changes in our policies because of that. But ultimately we got, people were really happy. People were really just amazed to see this, version come out. So again, we survived it.
Yeah.
But if you're worried about anything more than the content of the film itself, you're not necessarily a real fan. If you're worrying about the value of your product, and how it's going to resell. It's not the same thing. It's about the movie.
That's true.
And you guys are delivering the movie.
That's true.
Your job,
we really, like I said, I go back to what I just said earlier. We lucked out. I mean, we got a lot of hard work was put in play, but at the time we didn't have that theatrical cut from Warner and we didn't have this material. And so kind of all came together. But to have the Halloween and Nightbreed right there at the same time with both of these things going on, it was like, whew, our customer service, Cliff, we were all sort of like, oh my God, let's get through the Halloween season. Like it was something, but grateful.
Well,
is that the most stressful period you guys have had since being a company? Was that period?
That's a really good question.
That was the worst.
I think there were times at Nightbreed because that also at the time we were having a monthly Shocktober sale.
Right.
So it was like, I would just come in every day in October and I'm like, whoo, like Halloween, the date came and I just was like, let me go home and watch movies. Like I was exhausted, you know, working at Fangoria.
We put in 10-hour days through all of October just because there's so much content pouring in because everybody holds their horror releases until October. So we do 10-hour days just trying to cover everything in events. And by the end of October, when Halloween finally rolls around, I always call it amateur night. I'm like, I don't even have to go out, guys. I've been doing it all year.
That's exactly what I'm like. I'm celebrating every day. Like it's just, so there was just a lot, but I think that was really stressful. We but let that not minimize that, Cliff and I have our stressful days, year round, for different reasons. I mean, we love what we do. And we certainly love it when the fans are certainly excited about it, but there are days sometimes where we're just like, okay, the towel, it's almost close to, I'm like, no, but I love this movie, or no, I mean, there's still something there, or there's a nugget around the corner, or some talent is like really appreciative of what we do and retweets our message, or something gives us sort of that glimmer of hope,
Right.
So
so you want to talk a little bit about the Summer of Fear part 2.
What do you guys have coming up? I'm really excited about
I mean, we're looking at a few titles here that, I mean, I talked a very little bit about Sleepaway Camp 2 last week because I got the
ridiculous movie, by the way.
I know, I love it. But I told a story about one of the stories in the special features that I just found fascinating, and that's part of the thing that I love about getting a collector's edition is like you can live with a movie for 20 some odd years, a memory of it, and look at it one way, and then you just hear one story from the editor about the scariest scene in the movie, and then find out that they needed to extend something by 2 minutes, and you're like, I can't believe that's how that moment happened. But I love that stuff. So what are some of the titles that you're most excited about that are on the horizon or that are just coming out? I know Scarecrows was this week.
Yep. Scarecrows was. We'll talk a little bit and we mentioned fan controversies. We'll definitely want to talk about that one a little bit later. But
I went on your site before I came on the show. Are all the ones that are listed up to now, like in the new kind of coming soon, is that part of Summer of Fear?
Yes. Everything through the end of August is what was through beginning of May, starting with Mad Max to the end of August, which would be The Legacy and Metamorphosis and Beyond Darkness are all in the Summer Fear wheelhouse.
Because you need a Michael Winner chicken dinner scenario for the Sentinel. I think that could sell big units in the poker world. But I'm a huge Sentinel fan, so that's one I'm easily most excited about.
I will chime in on that a bit, but I do want to bring it to the Cliff on the Summer Fear titles. Do you have one that's like, super favorite? Here's a list just in case you need to. Cliff is just kind of like, what am I working on now? I'm working on fall titles.
Yeah, exactly. I'm working on October. So.
Well, I know you really liked Gun Woman a lot.
I like Gun Woman too, actually. I was pleasantly surprised by that.
You're because a big Mad Max fan.
Easily the one that was the most fun was Dog Soldiers.
And that was when you delayed for a while because you found good material.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, can I see the list?
Is the best racing too.
Neil Marshall was great. I mean, he really helped us out. He found 2 prints in the UK. He had them shipped over here. We went through and we looked at them to see which print was the best, and then we actually did a scan of the print.
He shot it in 16 millimeter, I believe.
It was shot in 16 and blown up to 35. So, of course, everybody's automatically going to go, it's grainy. But that's what it's supposed to look like. But he sat through the telecine. He approved it. And it's amazing. It looks so much different than the last master. So I see exactly why he hates the master that we've lived with for years, because it looks nothing like this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's watching that tonight when I get home.
There are scenes in the old master that look like they were nighttime when they were in fact daytime scenes.
Wow.
I mean, it's a different looking movie. He and everybody came together. We shot a lot of interviews in the UK, and it's a great disc. It really is.
Wow. Cool. Yeah, we've started shipping actually this week. Some people are starting to get it. If you order certain titles from our site directly, oftentimes we'll offer a 2 weeks early ship if possible. So people are starting to get it in their hands. I'll tell you, Dog Soldiers, I mean, again, a year process? We were supposed to release it in June of last year.
Right.
it's
And,
worth the wait.
It's worth it. And that's the whole thing is sometimes, I get into, in the marketing and social media, I'm like, oh my God, I got to send out another apology to people saying, well, there's been a delay. But in this case in particular, it really helps to do that. And hopefully it shows that we care. We really could have just, dealt with the old master. You know what I mean? So... So
and I like those movies where they could still, I feel like that's a film that maybe hasn't even found it anywhere near its full audience
exactly.
yet. Yeah. But I feel that people are catching on to Neil's work, and people who've maybe just started with Game of Thrones and they saw an episode he directed, they go back. Yeah. That's going to be a real fun surprise for them as a film.
I'm really excited about I, Madman, because that was one we were talking before about how sometimes we miss these giant releases that for some reason they miss our radar.
Well, it wasn't a giant release.
It's one that I remember hearing about it when it came out, and for some reason I just never saw it.
Is that part of summer or after summer?
Part of summer. It's in July.
And I'm really excited because I've never seen it. And once that kind of dawned on me, I'd never seen it. I was like, you know what? I'm waiting for the blue. So I'm waiting to see it.
Looks good.
I recommend it because I edited that documentary.
Look at you.
It's a lot cooler movie than. Not that I didn't remember it fondly, but it definitely had when you're in the height of Freddy Mania and kind of in the late 80s, you're expecting something. I was able to appreciate it much more now, which is, I think, kind of the thrill of you guys releasing a lot of those retro titles is that we get to see them again almost for the first time. I'm more excited now about Dog Soldiers than ever now that you're mentioning that, things that are supposed to be in daytime, because it's going to be like a brand new movie.
Well, I mentioned just earlier that I want to touch about Scarecrows, but I also want to talk about movies like I, Madman too, about, sort of the obscure ones that we pick up because we love them, but, we want to talk about sort of the sales and sort of like, in order for us to continue to put those out, we kind of need the fans' help, to
Well, it's
to
like all
survive
small,
this.
any business model. We always talk about it's like the person with Jump Cut. They're like, "Oh, I love your place," but then they go to Starbucks, and you have to point out, well, just so you know, that's why this place won't exist in a few months, and you'll have to be okay with that. If you're okay with that, then I can't control it, because you can't at Scream Factory every day be going, just so you know, guys, because you'll run out of steam.
Well, that's
so
why
it
goes to Fango as well. If people love the brand, they love the title, but if you're not subscribing, you're not supporting it as much as you can.
And that's another we definitely want to touch about that here on this podcast, because we want to sort of kind of give a little bit of a sort of a reality of state of affairs of where things are right now as far as sales, and not be depressing, but just kind of say, hey, you know what, the Mad Maxes and the Escape from New Yorks and the Halloweens, well, those are no-brainers. Those are going to sell. They appeal to a more mainstream audience. But, the movies like Eyed Madman or Deadly Eyes or,
Witchery. I am so excited about Witchery.
Or, so many others, New Year's Evil. We have so many of them. We love the obscure ones and we love resurrecting them, but we also see the sales numbers, and sometimes they're not as strong as we had hoped. And in order for us to continue to acquire them and to get them, we sort of need those sales numbers.
Here's a question, because without the rental market, obviously, that would have in the past bought those titles from, they still do a little bit. What do you guys, do Netflix buy your Blu-rays? They just don't.
No.
Yeah, that's interesting, because
sometimes they have, it's just, the timing's weird. Sometimes Netflix will get titles that you guys are about to put out or whatever, like almost simultaneously. The Babadook being a big example.
Well, but that's for streaming only, right?
For streaming only. And that one was also disc as well. It depends on the title and the studio. Sometimes I think one studio in particular sees what our lineup is and almost we almost think that they sync their films up,
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure they do.
For easy publicity.
Nothing happens in a void.
But we, it's not like we didn't get our Blu-ray into Netflix for Class of 1984, and we still haven't got it. And we have all rights on that, and we haven't got a Netflix deal for that one. So it depends.
May I take a moment to one of our good friends, Dick Grinert, told me to just thank you for the 1984 release, because he watched it again. He's like, man, it held up.
No question. Just thank you for Class.
He just wanted to thank you.
We loved that one. It's a fantastic film. It's not a horror film, but we opened up the brand this year to bring in a little bit more dangerous stuff for some horror comedies. And God,
you should. I think you should. I think a broader extension of the word is a good thing for the genre.
Yeah.
I still have to fast forward through the bunny. It's like I return to like my 6-year-old self watching it, and I still have to fast forward through all the bunny stuff.
Bunny stuff.
Yeah, in Class of 1984.
Oh, that's right. That scene. Yeah. I'm sitting there going, I'm thinking cartoon bunnies or something like that. I'm like, what? I'm like,
I saw that movie way too young because I was
about.
I was just enamored with punk culture when I was a little kid. And I remember, I was just a little, it still bleeds through. And, but I was just enamored with it. And so my parents never stopped me from renting anything. And I rented it way too young. And I remember being so, like, horror movies, I was fine with. That bunny scene fucked me up for life.
Yeah. But it triggers one of the greatest Roddy McDowell moments.
It does.
Yeah. Just him with the guy. Exactly. So no, it's good. So you were saying as titles that we were most excited about in the summer. Fear.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Two-part question based on what you were saying before about just discussing sales and stuff like that. And not to put fans on the spot, but was there a title that you guys got barrage nonstop on Facebook? Put this out, and you finally did, and it didn't sell or meet your expectations?
Well, yes, we've had a few of those. I think, wouldn't you agree, Cliff? The most recent example of this, actually, Scarecrows. This is where we can talk about it a little bit. So we announced this title, again, one of those staples from the late 80s, VHS cover, has a cult following. But, Cliff and I have access to see how some of these films performed on DVD. And Scarecrows didn't perform very well at all. Not at all. So at the time that we announced it, we had double featured it with a film called Destroyer, a 1988 kind of prison slasher film that we're going to put out later on this fall with another title we haven't announced yet. But at the time, it was double featured with that. And unfortunately, we got... in some sense attacked for putting Scarecrows with another film, and how could we, and got a lot of passion, which I want to make sure I'm respectful, but we did get a lot of anger through that. And so,
what's the negative of being on a double? Is it that
they were just like, how could you, pair this with something else? I wanted it as a standalone. Scarecrows is such a great movie. How could you do this? Just kind of a lot of, people's organization of, films and their collections, just a bunch of things. So anyways, we talked about it, and we were able to split it up and make Scarecrows its own standalone. And it streets this week. It's been getting reviewed really well, and the people that are getting it are really happy. But the pre-orders on it are lukewarm. They're not to the level of the noise. And I don't mean that again in a negative way. It's just not at that level. And we sometimes, we see numbers, and we are a business at the end of the day. I hate saying that because we're also fans too, but in order for us to bring the kind of Scarecrows movies continuing through our brand for a while, they have to sell, and so we need those numbers to be a little bit more up. Right. I hate to sound like a businessman, but it's the reality, because we have people, Cliff and I have people above us that sees the units of something like the Babadook and claps their hands and say, oh my God, this thing sold like crazy. And then, looks at something else and just says, is this all you're bringing in on it? And it could potentially hamper, us acquiring other things. So I think that's a recent example, we have had other titles over the years that, there's been some clamoring for, but again, in that same kind of, not the Escape from New Yorks, not the Fogs, not the biggies. And then we're like, this
what if the little smaller titles exceeded your expectation with sales?
Well,
surprised you?
That one, that's easier to answer. Town That Dreaded Sundown, for sure. Absolutely.
Do you think that was coinciding with the remake?
No. Okay. Actually, you know what? We had it out a year before, and it just really took off.
Wow.
Also, I think that was one that, because it just had never been on DVD either. So it's just like one of those much talked about, like, oh my God, I have to get that.
And it was definitely one that I remembered from my childhood, but I couldn't remember seeing since then. I guess just because it was never on DVD, that I was really excited to revisit that one.
And it coincided with the trombone kind of coming back in style.
Right, exactly. Trombones. We timed it that way.
Yeah, very well done.
Ninja 3 did really well for us. I mean, better than we thought, but it has really taken on. And I asked a question recently, because we just had our 3-year anniversary this past week of just having the brands, and asked, what was your all-time favorite Scream Factory release? And there were several people that put Ninja 3, and I'm like, well, that's great.
You might get another kick from the Canon documentary we just all saw.
I watched it.
Ninja 3, it definitely had some internet memes kind of come out from it. I can see it being kind of its own hype machine, just because it's so weird.
So crazy. Help me out. There's some other ones that are there that, I mean, I know that we talked about.
There's more that didn't perform. No.
There are some. There are
everybody
some.
Everybody wanted New Year's Evil, and
yeah, that's true. New Year's Evil. Definitely a passion project, and I didn't quite make those numbers. I was like, really, it's still there, and it's a fun movie. It's a canon film. It's ridiculous, and over the top. We thought Deadly Eyes, I mentioned that earlier, would do a little better. Didn't quite do so well. Squirm was an underperformer, surprisingly.
Wow.
Oh yeah,
I would have thought that one would have done well.
You know what? So here's something to say. So the recent slate of double features that we've had with the Animal Attack series, Empire of the Ants, Food of the Gods, Tentacles coming up in a couple of weeks, Jaws of Satan, all those. Because Squirm is a standalone, was kind of soft, we needed to make those into double features. That's the kind of decision making we sometimes have to make. We know that there's cult followings for all those films I just mentioned, but we also thought Squirm had a bigger following, and I just didn't quite do that.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like when I'm in a store and I see a double feature, I think, wow, 2 movies for the price of one.
Totally.
And some people just hate them, and I just don't get it.
Coming from like a collector point, because I understand, like, if I have I have this wonderful horror compilation that I got a long time ago, and it's got like Dementia 13 and The Night That Helen Rose from the Grave. I'm stating that title wrong.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, that one. And it's just got all of these titles on it, and they're all really good films. But part of the collector in me like wants those titles displayed separately instead of this one
so you're
box
one
that
of
just.
those people.
No, but
Listen, I have a Warner 4 film set that has like, Body Snatchers and Wolven and Coma and whatever. And Coma and Wolven have been put on Blu-ray, but I can't get rid of that thing because Bad Moon and
Bad Moon.
Body Snatchers are still on it. So, and it just says, Warner Collection. So I understand it, but but we also put the titles on the spine,
which is good.
We
because,
try unless it's in a collection like a Vincent Price or something that's a little bit more, Yeah,
but some of the doubles I think are really, look, I think the Carrie one was really smart because I don't know as a fan, I'm a completist, but I don't know as a fan if I would have bought them both separately. Like I have fond memories of The Rage. I love Cache, but at the same time, I remember hating the TV movie. However, because I got it on a double, I was like, let me rewatch the TV movie. Now, obviously the Brian Fuller connection. And as I was telling them, it's a lot more beneficial when you watch something without watching the original right away. Like, I tend to get in the habit of like, I'm watching a series, all right, I'm going to go in order. But it's actually a lot more beneficial that I hadn't seen Carrie in a really long time, that I just went right to the TV one. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, this isn't great, but it's not bad. And I like Angela Bettis. There's something to it.
Yeah,
and
it follows the book more.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that it's paired up with that movie, I think that's an interesting way for people to give another movie another chance.
Right.
Is because it's already paired up with something else you already like. So,
and to be honest, if the only way I'm going to get like a release of Cellar Dweller or The Outing is by having it on the disc with something else, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I don't mind it at all.
I'm going through my list just really quickly because I have all of them in front of me. Terrorvision, the Video Dead double feature. That did extremely well. Vampire Lovers did really well for us. Again, exceeded expectations. I would say Dark Angel by far. Wow, Dark Angel was a surprise for us.
Wow.
Yes, that one did really good. Let's see, Prince of Darkness, not a surprise there. Let's see, Eva Destruction sort of imploded. Did not. It's one of our lowest selling.
See, that one could have been put on I Come in Peace.
That one is one. Oh, Saturn 3 did very well for us.
Yeah.
Really? Saturn 3 did overperform for us. Not surprising, Night of the Demons was sort of expected on that one. Evil Speak did pretty good. Evil Speak did okay. Without Warning did good. I mean, again, that movie had never even had a VHS release. So it was really strong out the gate.
What's the biggest seller of all time for your company?
For catalog, it's They Live. And as of recently, our number one title is The Babadook by a long shot.
Yeah.
And that's can you talk a little bit about that pair? Like, because now you guys are delving into, I mean, you've always done newer titles, but now you're delving more into it, and also a collaboration with IFC, because the Babadook, and was there another title you guys did with them?
Extraterrestrial, and we also have coming out Alien Outpost, Dark Summer, Wormwood.
Right.
Dark Summer. And I think it's cool because now you've got a label that has cachet of quality behind it, that it makes you, to me, appealing. If I was an indie distributor, even because I know I'm going to get fucked on almost all the deals by anyone, I want to go with the people whose label I like, and I know they're going to put love into my release, regardless of the money I'm going to see back,
Well, Cliff can speak to a little bit more of the IFC Midnight if you want, because, don't you have some news to
Yeah, I mean,
share?
The IFC deal was great to... it's a great partnership. We love working with them, but it all happened because of Larry Fessenden. And we had done Beneath with Larry, and Larry had talked to IFC about having us release his early films. So that's what brought us and IFC together. And so this October,
correct,
we have the Larry Fessenden collection.
Are you doing Habit?
Oh, that's awesome.
It has No Telling, Habit.
Wow.
Wendigo, and
Last Winter.
The Last Winter.
Wow.
Nice.
Yep. And Larry is packing it with stuff.
That's
Excellent.
awesome.
He may have mentioned that when he was on Halloween, but
he didn't tell us who with.
we got him drunk, so
And he didn't say who it was with. He just said something's coming.
Good.
so that's great.
Yeah, we came in here today knowing that we would announce because this will go up on Friday.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we talked about that. And we thought, and we
Larry's
knew you guys.
great.
He'd been on the show,
yeah,
here,
yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
One of our
and I know
favorite
that you guys
shows,
are
and-
fans, so we thought it was really appropriate. So yeah,
Yeah, we love Larry.
In middle October, right before Halloween,
Beautiful.
we'll do it well.
Larry Pheasant and Box.
Yeah.
And so will that be a relationship that you guys still select which IFC title and midnight titles to put out, or will it be all IFC midnight?
We're releasing all IFC.
Cool.
Midnight.
Oh, that's
great.
awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, they do a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a
They've
great
been doing
partner.
well. They've been really good. I mean, again, the Babadook was the first off the ground, and that was a stressful time because we got it fast and we needed to get it out, and there was hype around it, and there was a lot of things going on, and we were a little nervous. We had a lot of units in the marketplace, and
And that was a really stylized disc, if I remember. Like, there was a lot of packaging
we had
involved.
we had a credit to our creative team. The packaging, the pop-up one for the special edition is something that was almost killed at last minute, and they pushed it through, and it made a world of difference on that particular release. And I'm so proud that we were able to execute that because the Babadook ended up just being, I mean, it's one of the better horror films.
Well, it
in the
actually
most
deserves
recent.
it. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
exactly.
You wanted people to see that movie.
And we got a lot of PR out of it, a lot of
Great.
awareness. And I think IFC, again, they've been very cooperative and good to work with.
Are you guys prepared to take the next level as a company once Howling 2 hits?
Yes.
Because your sister
It's
is
going
a
to vault you.
werewolf.
Well, it's going to vault you to studio levels.
Because
So-
Sybil will take you to dazzling new heights. I'm telling you. Once you put out one Sybil film, it's...
That's funny.
A lot of people seem to be excited about the Howling.
Well,
2.
okay. So again, here's a great point. So Howling 2, we had a lot of requests for it after the Howling, of course. It's a sequel, and it's also so bad it's good. It's known for being over the top. Tons of requests for it. So we put it out. We put a lot of bells and whistles. There's a lot of love. The pre-orders could, use a little bit of a bump. I mean, we
Just put the end credit scene on your
just,
website.
just get it for the end credits.
That
I
should
mean,
just be the DVD menu or the Blu-ray menu right
Right.
there. It's just that final credit scene.
I think once the reviews are out there and once it'll sort of pick up steam. But part of one of the reasons we're seeing a little bit of some sort of sales, maybe ambivalence, and which is one thing we wanted to mention on the podcast too, is that we do have a little bit of sort of increased competition, so to speak.
Right.
Without mentioning some other labels, there are other labels out there that are putting out similar cult movies like ours, and other ones that are just getting sort of the more independent stuff. So they're, as one person said it recently, it's a fantastic time to be a Blu-ray collector. You're seeing movies that you never would think would ever come out, and it's really good. But your average Joe only has so much dollars in their wallet. And so a month comes and they're like, okay, it's July. Is it the Outing and the Godsend from Scream Factory, or is it this title from this company, or is it this title from this company? Let me decide here, maybe wait for a sale later on. So there is a little bit of,
Yeah. I mean, it tends to be expensive across the board, not because I mean, it makes sense. It's like you have to retail a title for $20-25 or whatever it is. But if you get 4 obscure movies from 4 different DVD labels in the same week, it's like, shit,
That's
which one?
$100.
Do I want
Right.
Foxy Brown or Howling 2 this week?
right.
I don't
And
know.
some are, we sometimes will get a knock about sort of our prices, and we'll get, but then we'll see some of our competition put,
$60.
yes,
I've paid 60 for a Blu-ray before.
or even the prices that we're charging, and there's no extras, or it's just flat out bare bones. There's nothing wrong with that model. It's just people just need to know, that is, we are living in a collector world right now when it comes to physical and these kind of movies. And in order for us to do the transfers and extras and acquire movies, that's the other thing too, is that very little times does the home video company that's putting out the releases actually own the movie. They're paying advances. They're paying money to other companies. And so if you think about it, we're in the hole from the start, and we're trying to kind of make up money. And that's where we have to, on some levels, pass it on to the customer, but not pass it on too crazy, but still a business.
Yeah, most of the companies seem to kind of bolster what you're doing, because like a Vinegar Syndrome, they're pretty small. They're doing these very obscure things mostly. Maybe once in a while they'll do a Madman, right?
Yeah.
Very rarely, right?
And they did a good job on Madman.
Yeah,
you know what I
great.
mean? Like I said, the fans and us, we'll look at these other things and we'll be like, we'll give credit where credit is due all the time.
But what happens, like the company, and so for me, and you tell me if you don't even want to talk about it, but like I look at Arrow Films in the UK, on paper, they are similar to what you guys do here. So you guys are like similar companies, but it's separated by oceans, and now they're coming to a US market.
Yeah,
is that seen as bad form?
It
feels like it's not cricket.
Because I'm one of these people, I don't have a multi-regional player.
Yeah, I don't either, so I never buy this
stuff. I just kind of hate when everyone's like, but Arrow's putting that out. I was like, yeah, but I don't want to buy the UK.
I want the American.
There's a lot of people just like you, which is, it depends. Arrow's, U.S. entry so far is sort of kind of a remains to be seen. They have some interesting titles, Blood Rage, some other Society.
Would have been one of my ones.
Society was one that you guys had talked to us
I'm
about.
Just a fan of that.
Eaten Alive, some other things too. We have no visibility to their overhead. We do not know. We have an idea of how many units they will sell, and if that works for them and it makes them, if it's profitable for them, then that's great. But could
it go the other way for you guys to break into a foreign market, or is that just never, like, would you be interested in Screen Factory UK, for instance? Or
I think that the licensing,
it's
we
all
have
about
much
the licensing.
harder licensing rights in US than they do in UK.
Well, we often have fans ask, "Is this region free? Can this play in the US, UK?" And unfortunately, we only have the funds to go for domestic rights. We're a domestic company. We'd love to be able to region free and everything, but then with the amount of units are sold, Cliff can offer.
I think that's a good point. Like you said about Vinegar Syndrome, I think it's just a couple guys.
Yeah.
We have a staff of 50 or 60 people that, we need to keep around. So, our way of operating is much more expensive than theirs is. So, we get a lot of, why didn't you do a new transfer? And it's like, we don't own the movie. We only have, in most cases, home video rights, DVD, Blu-ray. So we can't monetize, the digital rights, or the broadcast rights, or whatever to help pay for that transfer. So, all we're doing is, spending $8,000 to transfer a movie, and then it sells 300 units. Well, it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out that we just lost money. So, as a business, like Jeff said, we have to make money, or we certainly need to at least break even. But you start losing money, and then, you can't acquire as many titles. So, it is all... we'd love, like Jeff said, as fans, to do everything that we want and do as many extras as we go on, or do a new transfer for every title. But at the end of the day, as Jeff said, we have to report to people.
Yep.
And, we're not a public company, we're a private company, but we have investors, and we need to report, that we make money. So, we can only bleed so much before, there's no Scream Factory.
Right.
So,
what about how is piracy? Is there anything quantifiable for you guys to trace with piracy of some of your titles being uploaded, or is it just too hard to?
There's no way.
No, really, it's hard.
Because I do feel like a lot of people do want to own a Blu-ray. If it's an obscure title,
titles.
like Ghost House, maybe they'll go, I don't need to own that one. I can download it from the director of Punisher, Warzone, or whatever.
Well, since we're talking about, like I said, we wanted to do this podcast to get everything on the table. I want to touch upon, we just mentioned, we don't own the films. One of the fan controversies that came up recently was in regards to Ghoulies and Ghoulies 2. Which was regards to...
Did Charles Band start this controversy?
No, Ghoulies 2 had some uncut scenes that we were able to provide as extras on the disc, but we were not able to do a Nightbreed. We weren't able to splice it into the film and make it a seamless branch. And we've had some of our films like that. And we've also had certain films that we've announced recently from bigger studios where people would like to have uncut versions or whatever.
Can we stop the podcast? Somebody out there expected you guys to actually put a scene from Ghoulies 2 back into the actual movie of Ghoulies 2.
Several.
You, all three of you are idiots. Whoever is listening. I'm sorry, that is just idiotic.
Believe me, there were more than 3. And,
oh my
and
God,
and in a dream world for the fans of Ghoulies, Ghoulies 2, that would be great. But we, Shout Factory, Scream Factory, we can't alter a film like that and then go to a studio. There's MPAA issues.
Right.
There's talent stuff. There's a lot of hurdles that we just don't have the authorization to do.
And I'm 90% sure if that edit would have made money, Charles Band would have done it like 10 years ago, guys.
And it's like sometimes, I can't remember what the film was, but I had just this great gag reel of all of these scenes that had been cut out of the film, people messing up their lines and so forth. And the studio legal department said, you have to track down, if you want to include that, you have to track down each person and have them sign off that it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's like, there's absolutely no way we don't have the manpower. I mean, the movie was a small movie, so those people might not even be working anymore.
Yeah.
So certain things that you would love to include, you can't because there are legal issues with doing that.
Well, we have some films that we've announced recently through Universal. One of them, which we'll talk about a little bit more, The Sentinel, and we have Shocker, which we just announced recently, and People Under the Stairs, and The Legacy.
Brian Collins.
Silent
Oh my God! Right now.
Unreal fan.
I have to confess, I saw Brian Collins recently at Horror Trivia, and I knew we had that title, and I pulled him to the side separately before we made that announced. So he acted all surprised when we announced it. No, he did not kiss me.
Yeah.
But I did see the sparkle in his eyes that he wanted to. And I did call him. I pulled him to the side and I told him we had it, and he was very obviously.
His reaction was probably shocker.
Probably,
like
yes.
the Dunkin' Donuts opening in Van Nuys.
But we have all these titles coming from Universal, and we have more that we haven't announced yet. And some of them, Shocker is a great example. We've already had, do you have uncut version? Do you have deleted scenes? Do you have stuff like that? Well, we'll ask. But the thing is that we have, a dance that we have to do with Universal. We don't own the films. Mm-hmm. We want to continue to acquire more films through them. We definitely pound on their door. But at some point, too, we also have to, again, politically dance and back off when need to, or sometimes the material just doesn't exist. What we grew up on these films, where we don't realize these movies are 26 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old. Like, there's just only a certain amount. Then Cliff has mentioned there was a fire at the studio.
You go to them and you say, do you have the TV spots? And they go, no. And it's like, how do you not have the TV spots, So, it's,
Yeah,
does it ever help to have, the talent, say, you have Wes Craven in your corner and you say, hey, Wes, can you be our middle person to go to the studios? Or does that not?
It's good when sometimes they've kept a copy. Maybe it's only on VHS, but, maybe they have them. And that's always great when that happens.
Right.
But it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. We try. There are... there have been only a few titles where, the homework maybe wasn't as vetted as much. I'm talking Cruel Jaws.
I was going to bring that up.
And then we were like,
come up twice today. What is going on?
It's a Cruel Jaws day.
The movie is so ridiculous. We wanted to put it out.
Seen
it's kind of
so
wonderful.
I popped it in, and I hadn't seen it in entirety. And then, we had a lot of people saying, there's a lot of scenes in this, and we went through it. And I'd heard rumors of it, and it wasn't until I actually watched the film and said, oh yeah, that's from Jaws. Oh, that's from Jaws 2.
And Star Wars music.
Yeah, there's
Last Shark.
It was kind of like, okay. But aside from that, when we look at a film, Shocker's a good example. We know that, okay, so it was MPAA trimmed at the time to an R, but that is also the only version that's only been released to our knowledge and is the only version that's out there. We'll ask, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get it.
Well, we have a great relationship with Universal. We've did business with them for 9 years or something like that. But, we're only one of two people that they will even license content to, and it's Criterion and us. So, we want to keep the relationship, and, we ask where we can for certain specific things.
Yep.
And,
word is Mitch Pileggi has it hanging from his wall. Just these little strips of film.
If it exists, they'll give it to us.
So good segue and back into the Summer of Fear. And one of the titles that I'm most excited about is one of your favorites, and it's The Sentinel. Yeah. I've been... since the brand started 3 years ago. Cliff is laughing because this was a title that was on one of our original deals back in the early days, and it was pulled off, and I was crushed. But we had Deadly Bliss. We got that, and a couple of other titles got pulled off as sort of a last minute. Yeah.
Well, the only way to even see a good version of that film was either MGM or TCM. I saw it on one of those channels once, and it looked great on that. But any other way, it's going to look dark and crappy.
Yeah. So this was a title that, after The Fog, I was like, all right, well, that's my thing. And I never thought The Sentinel would be a possibility because there was a while where we didn't have a deal with Universal and we just didn't have any more. So the fact that this is becoming a reality, I'm just mind blown. We have some really good features on it. Some one in particular I can't wait to let everybody know about because it's very unique to the film. And if you're a fan of the film, you're definitely going to want it. And it's a screwed up movie and it has a really good plot. We had a good response on it. But again, without disclosing a whole bunch of stuff, there are things that we would like to do for the movie that we're still trying to do for the movie. But again, we don't own the movie. So we have to just kind of, it's a little bit of a watch and wait, but totally excited for that one.
Yeah, me too. And again, it's another movie I think that will find a whole new fan base. It might not happen straight away, but once it hits and people start word of mouth on a movie like that, it's actually creepy. It actually is weird. Yeah, it's not. I don't know. To me, it's always in that conversation. It's in the vein of Rosemary's Baby's world. Totally. The way it looks, the brown.
Well, it was always the. You've heard of Rosemary's Baby. You've heard of The Omen. You've heard of The Exorcist. You've heard of Carrie. The Sentinel? Yeah. Oh, no. But it's really a mishmash of basically all those movies. Yeah. It's,
It's the Michael Winner film without Charles Bronson.
Right. But, again, the stars in that film, there's there's not another horror film that I know that has such a crazy lineup.
Especially of the older people,
and up and coming.
You guys are making me want to rewatch The Sentinel, and I've never said that before in my life.
The Sentinel's awesome.
It's a great movie.
Right,
so anyways, there you go.
I want to do, just for fun, I want to do some quick fire titles at you guys. When we talked about you guys coming back on, Elric said immediately all right, all three of us have to come up with 3 titles that we want them to put out.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to list of 10. I said,
I ended up, I wrote down 7, so I have to cap them.
Whether you can or not. So.
I say we get 3 and then one that's so obvious that for the fans we can ask. There's one that's just so obvious a fan.
Do we want to go 1-1-1 or just
1-1-1?
1-1-1. Let's do it.
Just because we just discovered it on our 100th episode, The Prey from 1984. Really
That's
obscure.
Funny. Who has that? And we've had that requested
by AJ Bowen.
The Prey. It's
AJ Bowen wants to
Anchor. What?
I think it might be with him.
No, I remember there was a rumor a long time ago that Anchor Bay was going to put that on DVD, and they never did.
Yeah.
This would be now. See, this is interesting. Okay, so if we have people asking for The Prey, we'd like to have it too, but we also saw the numbers for Final Exam and The Final Terror, and that would be our comp for that. And, we would have to make a decision.
That seems like a double feature, right? It feels like you put that with the mutilator and you're good to go. Exactly. Everyone wants a mutilator.
He slid in an extra title.
I did.
The mutilator is not with us. We're hearing rumors that it's with somebody else, but it is.
I didn't ask for the mutilator. I don't know if you're trying to take one of my ones.
But what's one of yours?
My number one of all time, and it's probably being released somewhere, and it's probably a no-brainer, is The Hitcher. So I'm always curious where The Hitcher exists.
That's with Warner and HBO.
I think HBO still has it.
Yeah.
And that's not on Blue as far as I know.
It isn't. We can't get to, when I think of HBO, I also think of The Changeling, because we get that a lot. We get it requested for a lot. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers is not sublicensing any of their content. They have so much in their vaults. We would love to have, we know fans would just love to see even them put out. Mm-hmm. I know that recently, like I mentioned, Wolven, they just put out interesting choice to kind of start off a horror in the Warner Archive world. But maybe it'll do well for them enough to put out some other stuff.
They thought it was an Albert Finney period piece. And they were like, oh, put it out. Werewolves?
No, unfortunately.
Okay. No, this is why I want to ask, because I want to know why they won't come out.
No, that's true.
You know?
Bekah?
This is one of my favorite films of all time, and I'm 90% sure it's never been released to Blu-ray. Wicker Man.
Yes, it's out. Lionsgate put it out.
Oh, damn. Okay.
She's like going to go on Amazon tonight.
I didn't even know that.
Now
So you can do another one. No.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I'm going to go Prom Night 2. Hello, Mary Lou.
Look at my number 2.
Oh,
That's
damn.
funny, you know.
Somebody has that.
Somebody has that. It is not. We thought. Well, MGM Fox put it out on DVD before.
Yeah,
And we've
lost
obviously
the
had a
rights.
relationship, but they have lost the rights, so we don't have the rights to that one.
Because that was a Canadian film, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Michael Ironside was the principal. And
Yeah,
good film.
It's a good one.
It's a fun film.
It was
really fun.
really fun, and it definitely has that like rabid following,
like Slumber Party Massacre.
Totally.
When you
We
put
just
that
did
out,
a huge article on it in Gore Zone. The new
Yeah,
Gore
you
Zone.
did. I read it. It was fun.
Yeah.
It is a fun movie.
Well, great. I get an extra one now that you picked one of mine.
Damn!
The 1984 skin classic, They're Playing with Fire, starring Sybil Danning.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of this?
funny. Of course I have.
Thorny.
Wouldn't that be more Shout Factory though than Scream Factory?
No.
I don't know, because it turns
because
into a
it's
slasher.
a slasher.
It is a movie that you'd put into that quasi hybrid thing. It's
I
the
don't
post.
know who owns it.
Don't know who owns that one.
right.
So
Looks like you have homework, guys.
It's
That's what Sybil said.
it's a crazy movie.
I have to ask. This one's for the fans. I promise it's not for me, and it's such a universally
That's
one.
right. We want to know what the fans
And
want
I'm
too.
sure this overwhelmingly on our side was Demon Knight.
Oh, yeah. That's a
Yeah.
big one.
A lot of people love the Tales from
It
the
was
Crypt.
the Tales from
Demon
the
Knight.
Crypt one.
Okay, so
Yeah, I mean, at this time we don't have it, but you never know.
could chase it.
That could.
where is that? Which company is that? I don't even know. Is that Warner? No,
I
that's
believe it's with Universal.
Okay, Universal. Cool.
So-
So because you have a relationship with Universal, there's always a chance.
It's a possibility. We know
Okay.
it's been requested a
That
lot.
one wasn't my ask.
That was
Oh, that's not fair.
The one that I want, which you probably have.
Oh, my God.
Goodness.
No, it's new. We've got 3. The Kindred is this movie that I fell in love with, and everyone thinks I'm insane, and it could be on a double feature, but I love it.
The Kindred is apparently
fun.
with Synapse Films, and it's held
really?
up in a lot of legal rights. Or there's something. They were the last
Yeah.
company to have that in their roster.
Yeah, interesting.
But even just to be out on DVD, let alone the whole Blu-ray thing. But
Didn't happen.
didn't happen.
It came by us one time, but we couldn't make the numbers work. That was before you were there.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
That watermelon guys.
You know what? I know that film, and
fun.
that is a fun film. Definitely worthy of a rewatch and a reinvestment
Yeah.
because it was goopy and it was
Goopy
kind of
and fun
like it kind of came and went, but it's like I'd love to see a new version of that.
Yeah.
Bekah?
Okay, this is one of my favorite. Like, I never buy the international copy of something, but it's all that's available. Paper House.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know who owns that.
I know MGM had it on DVD.
No, I think
It never was
Vestron.
released on DVD
It's a British
here.
film.
Yeah.
It's only available
That's
on
right.
VHS
No, I
because
know.
I bought
I know.
the
It's,
DVD from Britain.
Vestron released the VHS.
Is that
Yeah,
Bernard Rose' first
Vestron
film?
did.
So
Yeah,
it could
Bernard
still
Rose.
be tied up at Lionsgate.
Yeah, you know, because I was going to
Oh,
say,
that
we
sounds
used to
right.
show it all the time on
That sounds
Fearnet.
right.
Yeah.
And I think because it was Lionsgate.
Okay.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Damn, that's
Yeah.
such a good movie.
Yeah.
I know that Scanners 2 and 3 did not do well.
No, they did not.
So I'm just going to say
They're one of our
Scanners
Scanner
should
Cop,
have,
I
even
knew
though
that
it's
was
not going to happen.
They're
No chance.
yeah. Unfortunately,
The
scanners
definitive.
2 and 3
swear
are
it's right out
one
there.
of our lower
Well, my
selling.
real third pick was
now he's doing
Bubba
it.
Hotep. There's no Bluray of it. Is that
There isn't.
MGM?
Yeah, no.
Never been put out on
What about
Blu-ray.
the one
It's
in
not
the
with
Elvis
MGM,
jacket?
right?
No.
No, wait,
People
I guess
think
that was
that
the
it
DVD,
is,
yeah.
but-
I think Don owns it. Maybe.
Don owns it, yeah.
So it could happen if
Yeah.
somebody talked to Don.
Yeah.
That'd be a good
He
one.
seems like a reasonable man.
He's a very nice man. I enjoyed working with him.
So my next 3 that I'm going to
Oh my God! I'm giving 2 more
It's a
then.
movie I absolutely love, and I think I've heard before that it's in all sorts of rights issues. It's a smaller film, Haunting of Julia, with Full Circle was the other title. With
Yeah, it's with
It's such a good
Sony.
movie.
Well, Sony had it on wait, no, that was a media
That was a
from
media.
media from
Media
VHS.
VHS, yeah.
I thought that Sony had it. I don't know.
Somebody had streaming rights at one point, but
we don't know who owns that one. It's not through. Definitely, it's not through.
Like a while back, I was talking to the director of The Boogeyman because I wanted to release that, and unfortunately, it's still hung up at Sony.
Yeah,
for another 5 years.
Sony's another company again.
They don't sublicense.
Well, they do, but they don't allow extras.
They won't allow us to do
But
extras.
they also there's titles that are held up by other. I mean, again, another company that has things like Piranha 2 or just a lot of fun titles. I don't know why I picked that one.
We could put them out with nothing on them, but that's just sort of not what we want to do.
Not what you do.
You know what? Again, and that's a really good thing. What I said earlier, if we see some stronger numbers on the obscure titles, it would help us to go to say something like Sony and look at something like just throw out Nightwing as an example and say, hey, we think this can sell X amount of units, but we just also said earlier that those creature double features are
Having
double
to be
features.
paired,
So
Yeah.
But if Sentinel does well, Haunting of Julia could do well.
But we just don't know where the Haunting of Julia.
Yeah, I don't know where that one is.
I mean, we don't. I've had a couple of requests for it, but again, niche, and again, like Legend of Hell House did well. That's kind of like a 70s kind of niche.
It's got a good title, though.
We'll look at. Well, here's a great example. So there's the Sentinel, which has a following and is definitely fever pitched. Then we're putting out the Legacy, which is not as big as the Sentinel. It came out later. It's in the 70s. So we would kind of look at those numbers before we looked at sort of other gothic-y, like...
what's funny about that? I was about to rent it on VHS because I'd come across a list about brother and sister movies or something, ghost movies, and that was on the list. And I was like, I got to see this Legacy movie. Only place was VHS, so I was about to rent, and then I came across your site and saw it was getting Blu-ray. I'm like, yes, waiting for that
Usually
release.
when we wait,
It's Sam Elliott, right?
Yeah.
That looked fun. I haven't seen the film, though.
I mean, that's another point is when Jeff says that we have to use that as a comp title. It'd be wonderful if we could just pick whatever movies we wanted to release, but we have salespeople that need to chime in on whether a title is going to sell or not. And so we have a lot of people that we need to answer to. So
because of that, is there a more conscious effort to try to get once every quarter a Mad Max or Escape from New York? So you're always aiming for at least one of those titles to
help pay for some of the smaller titles.
Because usually those titles come in a package, so to speak.
Okay.
And so when, for instance, Escape from New York and Mad Max are in an MGM package. And so when you're looking at the deal as a whole, when it comes down to all right, so profits and loss or whatever, and they do it title by title, but they look at the overall deal. When those films are overperforming, well, it just makes the whole deal. So a Mad Max and an Escape from New York is in a sense paying for a Howling 2, so to speak. Not to mark that one, but that's not going to sell as much.
Is it paying you to not release Escape from LA?
Oh, come on.
Well, I give one more here because I didn't get my third yet, and I'm going totally niche on this one.
Okay.
But you guys said that I think it was HBO. It was either HBO or Showtimes that owns these. I am dying for a Cast a Deadly Spell Witch Hunt combo.
I don't know those ones.
Yeah, they're the HBO.
HBO, and they were two.
They were funded.
They were
for HBO
made
movies,
for HBO movies from I want to say
Fred
the late
Ward
80s. Yeah, Fred Ward, and then the second one has Dennis Hopper. And they're these noirish detective stories in Los Angeles, as if Los Angeles had invented magic and it was traded on the black market, and monsters really
This is the
existed.
Dennis Hopper thing, right?
Dennis Hopper's in the second one. He's in Witch Hunt, and then the first one's Fred Ward, and it's got Gillian.
Lord of Illusion.
Yeah. They're really fun. I've always wanted a combo Blu-ray of them. I own them both on VHS tape, but I don't think they've ever made it past that. No. So.
Sorry, we've struck out. Was there more?
They were on Laserdisc.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to the fan stuff because there's titles. But I've got more.
I do. I have The Pit.
I would love to have that, but it is with Image. Yeah, that's a hysterical movie.
I heard this one might be coming to Blue, but I've been hearing that for a year. Shock 'em Dead.
Never even heard of that.
Oh my gosh!
Tracy Lords.
Yeah, Tracy Lords. It's like this heavy metal Satan pick from '80s. Yeah, that's a really fun one. It's got this crazy guitar in it. Yeah, I've been hearing about that coming for a while.
Wow.
The Burbs. Is The Burbs on Blue?
It is not, and we
asked for it, and Universal's planning to do it themselves.
Damn.
So.
Okay. And then the only other one I had Intrapedo's Punk, but no one's ever heard of that one but me.
Including nobody in the room.
Including no one in the room.
I'm not sure what she said.
If you like Class of 1984, check out Intrapedo's
They're trying to sell discs.
I know. Okay, fine. Last one, because I know you guys are fans too. Fade to Black.
We can't get the rights.
I spent a long time trying to get the rights to that, and just
It's not. It's that and Hell Night are in the same bucket, correct?
Well,
No.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
And is it too many people? Kind of like the Fright Night 2. There's back.
or no one knows who owns it.
If it's we
The
know.
guy that owns it is rich, and so
For
he
Fade to
just-
Black.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, I email him, he doesn't answer me. So.
Yeah, it's not on his list.
All right,
doesn't
that's
love
it.
me.
I get requests for that probably once a month.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a fun one to put out,
Yeah.
and Hell Night is another one too.
You
I
ever
think
seen
maybe 'cause-
Brian Yesna's Necronomicon, or it's actually three
Book
directors?
of the,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like Book of the Dead
still with
Necronomicon.
Warner Brothers. I
Oh,
believe.
that's a Warner. So we basically just need to trace all the Warner stuff and forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? There
Cast it out.
have been times on the Facebook page where I've almost wanted to just put every Warner Brothers title and say,
Yeah.
"Hi guys, we can't get any of these,"
Yeah.
and but I can't do that. Thankfully, we also have people that chime in on the page and like, "Can you get Stephen
Yeah,
King's The It?" And people are like, "Warner Brothers," or like,
Right.
"Can you get Waxworth?" Lionsgate. Like, so we actually appreciate that people do that because we've said it now for 3 years,
Yeah.
and
But now you've
we
whet
hope-
everyone's appetite for Universal titles. Everyone's like, ooh, like gonna look
that's
through
true.
them.
Yeah, we can get them.
Let me go to the Facebook page for the questions.
Yeah, we have
let me just shoot out titles, like, because that's easier.
Sure.
And since we're on that, but let's see. Preston DeFrancis is asking about Stephen King miniseries. Is there any access to it or Golden Years or any of that stuff? I don't even know who has that.
I just said,
Warner.
it's
Warner.
with
Yeah,
Warner
that's
Brothers.
Brothers.
Golden Years is still with Paramount, I believe. So, no.
Let's see. Ken Hanley from Fangoria.
Yes.
He asked for The Hitcher, which we already mentioned. Tales from the Dark Side of the Movie, Innocent Blood. And since you guys did Halloween, any chance of other box sets like Phantasm or things like that? Or is that in the cards at all?
Well, Tales on the Dark Side is with Paramount, and Paramount's catalog is locked
Warner
in
Brothers.
with Warner Brothers. So again, that
And
includes
Innocent
all.
Blood is with Warner Brothers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, there are other Paramount films like April Fool's Day, The Keep,
My Bloody Valentine.
Bloody
which isn't available
There's so
right now.
many that
I'm so glad I got that line.
Prophecy,
My Bloody
I mean, like,
Valentine when
yeah.
it came out.
Yeah.
What about box sets in general? Like, obviously, Halloween was successful for franchises and the Vincent Price collection. So, will we see more things like Vincent Price? Will we see more franchise box sets? Is that possible?
Well, everybody better buy the Larry Fessenden.
It's difficult. I mean,
yeah.
I imagine it's harder.
possible.
Cliff does a really good job keeping his eye open for those kind of opportunities, and there have been some in the past that tried to materialize and they didn't.
There's the Amityville Horror. Which,
We did the Amityville Horror one and the Halloween one, but there have been some other ones that I know that you've tried that I'm just not going to make public that we haven't been able to get. We do get. I hate to say
it's difficult when movies are owned at different studios. I mean, if you're doing the Amityville box set, why aren't you including those other TV movies with Patty Duke or whatever?
Right.
But I mean, it was
Counted
just
one day they go up to like 11.
Oh my God,
or
it's
12.
nuts.
It's
I
insane.
mean, it's just too hard to deal
With
with all
something
sorts
like-
of different licensors.
With something like Phantasm, though, would you be? You'd mostly have to be dealing directly with Dawn, right?
Yeah, I'd love to do it.
So
yeah,
And
we
you
don't
guys have two,
We
right?
don't have
Yes,
it.
we have two.
Yeah,
Okay.
but we don't have it.
So
And
Dawn,
was,
if you're listening,
was great to work with.
Yeah,
we'll slip the
I
word.
would love to get it.
Well, since somebody, Mike Kenny is asking, since you guys did
Kenny.
Ghoulies and Ghoulies 2, any other full moon titles, like things, they have plenty of obscure things from the 70s and 80s that could be better treatment. Any more stuff with Charles Band, maybe.
It's funny. If I'm reading between the lines on that one, I know people would love us to get Tourist Trap because
Yeah.
of just, the problems, unfortunately, that happened on that one. But
We have Ghost Town coming up. That's an
Ghost
Empire
Town is an
film.
Empire one.
We have Cellar Dweller and
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple of those.
yeah.
And And you guys did one of the Empire titles that it was on a compilation disc that I was shocked how good it is. I can't even remember. It was
Catacombs?
Catacombs, I was going to say it was about a girl in a monastery.
That's being paired with Cellar Dweller on Blu-ray.
I like Catacombs.
They
and
look
it was
great. We did new HD transfers on
it. Was crazy because I'd never heard of it, and I ended up watching it for review, and I was like, man, this is a really good film. How did I miss this
David
one?
Schmaler, I'm saying his name right, the director of Tourist Trap. I mean, and Pino Donaggio, is it Donaggio?
Yeah. And it was shot on the Italian studio that Charlie Band had out there. He bought a studio in Italy, and portions of it were there. And then
Dino De Laurentiis's.
That's the one. And then he did actual castles too, so it's like on location. Like it's a really beautiful.
No, it looks much better. I mean, those Cellar Dweller and everything. Those were put out originally on an all-night horror marathon on DVD, where we weren't able to give upgraded masters to, and boy, we heard it, but we tried to price it as cheap as it could be. And thankfully, we were given the okay to sort of experiment and pull some of the notable films out of the outing, which, by the way, is the cut of the lamp. So the people were asking if we had the longer
pre-credit sequence.
Yes. So for the first time here, people will be happy to learn that it is a longer cut. The Godsend, which is a Canon picture on that one, which is totally Omen ridiculous. And then the other ones, but we're happy to get those. But I think those are the other Empire ones. If those do well, maybe we'll be able to do some other ones. But again, they have to do well. We'd love to be able to pull out some other films.
In terms of those movies that do well, and we're talking about the Escape from New York's, obviously there's only so many that even exist out there. Where did Reanimator fall in that? Because that strikes me as a no-brainer.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I saw Reanimator mention Alante, but there's already I think one, at least maybe two
different Blu-rays.
Well, that hasn't stopped us before.
Yeah, maybe they're looking for a collector, of 1, 2, and 3.
But there is a collector. But I mean, maybe the sequels. But are those with using it? I don't know.
I don't know.
We did not get Bride of Reanimator.
Lionsgate has 2 and 3 at the moment.
Okay. Well, somebody was asking, this is a good question. Somebody was asking about Cemetery Man. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your connection to Anchor Bay, because I think people assume because you did the Halloween box set that you now have access to their library.
Anchor Bay doesn't have the rights to it.
Okay.
Oh, really? Where does Cemetery Man lie now?
I've sent a lot of emails.
I'm
not getting many answers.
We do get a lot of requests for that one.
It's a great film. I'd love to do it.
I think that one would blow up if it had a great release. I think people would really catch on to that film.
It needs a new audience.
The other thing too to know is that our connections with Anchor Bay last year are kind of not the same as they are this year. Also, the industry changes, people change. That would be correct to say, so sometimes
we did a great set with them, but the title has to make sense and to make money to do it, and so.
Let's see what else is in here. There was a lot.
Can we go back to the scenes in Ghoulies too that you didn't? What the fuck were you thinking?
Please not.
I think this can open up a little bit more of a broader topic. But Scott Pliskin, speaking of escaping,
there you go.
He asks if there's any plans in the future to expand your titles to have ultraviolet, like the digital download version. And I'm curious if you guys have ever thought about that, if that's even financially makes sense, or how that ties in the digital side, like.
That's a different right.
To
the film. So
that's
no, they wouldn't. The studios aren't going to allow us to do that. Okay. And in some cases, the title might not be available on ultraviolet, so it would have to be put up there and so forth. So no, our rights with the studios are physical goods only, which would be the DVD, of course, DVD and the Blu-ray. But that's exactly what our rights are. Yeah. So.
What do you guys see, because now that you're doing some, I'm really happy to hear that the deal with IFC Midnight, to be honest, because when you guys did the battery last year, a part of me thought, that's really cool using the cachet that you have from some of these other older great releases to look for, to help bolster new filmmakers.
Well, that cachet of the older films is why we got the Babadook and some of this stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, I did mention that to our presidents. I was like, the crawl spaces of our world may not, do all that great, but it's the breadth of the catalog that we're able to say, look, we have over 100 films, and we've been able to do this.
And
really,
you're drawing in new fans with anything you release. So you can release a crawl space. Some guy might not have been a fan of bigger releases, goes, but I'm the Kinski.
Right, exactly.
But I was going to ask him, with those kind of releases, what is like kind of the hope for the future? Because you've done so much and you've done these big, I'm not saying specific hopes, but like, what would you guys like Scream Factory to be seen as? Is it being somewhere that is distributing relatively unseen films and older films, or is it what you're doing now, but just to keep doing it? Is there anything you like look down the track and think that you would really like to aspire the company to? It sounds...
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I mean,
I'd just like to be around next year.
You just like to survive.
I mean, like I said, when Cliff and I started the brand, it was on the catalog stuff. It was on the Halloween 2s and the Terror Trains and the Burning and, movies like that. I think that both of us would love to continue to put those kind of movies out there, the catalog stuff. However, it must be noted that we are, as I said before, a business. Some of these titles, the new contemporary ones, I'll say Dark Hall or Animal or Deep in the Darkness or just recently IFC's Extraterrestrial. It's hard for me sometimes to push them on social media because people want the Terror Trains and the other movies. I kind of mentioned the older ones. But these are the ones that are selling quite a bit at Walmart.
The new films are selling?
And that's what we've always run into with Walmart is when Fango puts out titles, it's all about the cover. Yep. And if we do something that's older or might be more niche, it's not going to move as well as something that's new and flashy with a giant alien claw on the front.
Right. So. No, and that's also good to, is another reason why I want to come in there is just, look, to the people listening, to the fans out there, we are those fans, but we all have to sort of step back and take a little bit of a reality check that we are niche, and that to kind of put that in a little bit of perspective when it comes to, these films like Howling 2, a great example. Lots of people love it. Lots of people that we know watch it with their friends. They post it on Facebook. We're all in a sort of a bubble, but it doesn't turn into the kind of units that, Dark Hall, which would sell, from Chiller, that, is not.
My Little Pony sells for us.
Right, exactly.
That. My daughter loves My Little Pony.
So it's just, we should also.
We're in a vacuum. We're in a bubble.
We're in a little bit of a bubble. And that's where we almost ask for a little bit of just, I got to think of the right word here. Just a little bit of like,
it's empathy.
Yes,
we need your empathy.
Yeah, a little bit of empathy. Just sometimes when a release comes out of ours, and if it's, okay, so there might be a compression issue, or there a small one, or there might be a comma missing on the wrap, or there might be an extra that has a glitch in the audio or something like that. We've never said we're perfect. We strive to be, we really do, but know that. We're trying our best, and for the kind of titles that may not be, sort of selling to the rafters of what we think, that they would. So, anyways, I don't know how that's going to come across. I hope it comes across.
They can't all be friendship is magic.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I also saw, how did the double feature comedies do for you? Because you guys did like High Spirits and One Spittin' and stuff like that. And
see, interesting.
It's neat delving into those types of films. I saw Easy Money. I think is going to be a Shout Factor.
Yeah, it is.
I can't wait for it because I love it.
What were you going to say?
I loved High Spirits. Like I was so excited to see you guys put that out. No one else.
High Spirits and Vampire's Kiss out the gate did okay, but Love at First Bite and One Spittin' did like double it. And I think it's because a couple of things. I think One Spittin' has a little bit more of a following, but we had a song in Love at First Bite, the Alicia Bridges song, I Love the Nightlife, that had not been on prior video releases before, that we reinstated back in. And I think that made a huge difference on that title.
Interesting.
But
horror comedies, they don't sell as well in general, right? As collectors.
It's too early to tell. We may have some other ones coming up. In fact, we do. Bigger ones than these. And we'll have to see.
Please.
We'll have to see. Lionsgate.
Damn it.
Where's Friday Night Part 2? Friday Night Part 2.
Friday Night Part 2 is think with Lionsgate, but we don't know for sure.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's held up with a bunch of movies that were made by a company that doesn't exist anymore, and nobody knows what the assets are. Paramount still has them for TV, but they don't have home video rights. So there's a group of titles like Penelope Spheris' Dudes is in that group.
Oh, I have the VHS tape of that signed by John Cryer. Or, wait, is it John Cryer?
Yes. It's John Cryer. Yeah. So there's a handful of movies, and this happens from time to time.
We just legally can't put out, sort of.
Tried to find, other people that may or may not hold the assets for the company.
Speaking of Penelope Spheris, I actually asked a trivia question about this one last time. Summer Camp Nightmare. I used to love that movie. It's written by Penelope Spheris.
Yes, I know what that is, and God,
I think it's with Corman.
Summer Camp Nightmare?
I think so.
God, I would think that the Code Red people would have put that one out.
Yeah,
by now.
it's never made it past VHS.
I remember the video. I remember the VHS. I don't think I ever saw it.
It's cool.
I remember the artwork for it. I'm not sure.
It's got a very
cool. It's
similar Sleepaway Camp style artwork.
I will say this: if that title had showed up on a say MGM list, we definitely would have seen it and circled it because
this is something that somebody did ask, and I want to say because we were talking about Messiah of Evil, which Code Red actually did a really nice nice version of. But the question was it also shows up that it's in public domain, not the Blu-ray, but it just says the title is in Night of the Living Dead. The original is obviously a title that a lot of people would like to see. You guys do a release. What happens when it's in public domain, but somebody puts it on a Blu-ray? Like somebody puts out Messiah of Evil on Blu-ray, does that mean they get to do that and you can't? Somebody else can't do it? I don't.
Well, I don't. I think the creators of Night of the Living Dead don't believe the film's in the public domain, and it's been licensed to the Weinstein Company, and they did a great DVD a while back. So yeah, I wouldn't do it unless we could get their blessings and be able to do it. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it.
So public domain's like a state of mind? Well, if you just leave your film and don't ever claim it?
There are tons of movies that are definitely in the public domain.
Carnival
Dementia 13, like you said.
Dementia 13.
Carnival Souls. But, what are you going to use as a master? You know?
Right. Yeah.
In some cases there are people that have prints or whatever, but... it's come up before in our company, but I would not do Night of the Living Dead unless George Romero and John Russo and all of them were part of it. So
true. What about just John Russo and not Romero? Because he can deliver, apparently.
No way. And Russ Steiner, I think.
Is there a Blu-ray of Carnival Souls? Off the top of your head?
I don't think so. Criterion put out the DVD.
Criterion, yeah. So
that's on my horror box set that I have. I can't get rid of.
I've been waiting for a Blu-ray of that one.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film.
But again,
there's a Mill Creek, multi-pack that has scarecrows on it. It's not in the public domain. MGM owns it, but it's on there. So some people's idea of public domain is like the company doesn't exist anymore, so it's free.
Right.
And it's like, no, the company's been bought by somebody else.
Right. There's
the family of the director or producer owns it. It's not really public domain.
I would love to see a proper Night of the Living Dead on Blu-ray because I don't think anybody's. I think there's a Blu-ray
There's a
somewhere.
Japanese disc. Yeah, I think it's the same Weinstein Brothers transfer. But
we'd love to get it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that was a lot of ground covered, and you shot down a lot of our title requests, but enlightened us with a lot of good ones too. I guess my last question is this is 3 years now doing Scream Factory. You guys have been on the show several times. What have been what have you noticed? What have been the changes over the course of that time in terms of? You mentioned sales quite a lot this episode, so. Have things for the collector market gotten better? A little. How has it changed over the course of the last 3 years? Like, what have you noticed, and what have you adapted to in terms of your business model?
Well, there's less retailers, that's for sure. I hope we don't lose any more.
Yeah,
It's so sad to drive by the location that used to be my Blockbuster, which has now become an AutoZone.
Wow, the one near my house is now a DuPont paint.
Yeah, my Hollywood Video is now Camarillo Bridal, So it's just so sad to see those two gone.
Has it driven more sales to your website and things like Amazon?
We've been doing really good Amazon is one of our, on most of these titles, is the leading, but our e-commerce site has been really good. I credit to them in the last year and a half or so for really turning around our e-commerce business, where we're able to offer a lot of these films maybe 2 weeks early, the collector's editions with posters, and then they're shipped out actually early. Fans get it. We have a better customer service in place than we did before, and so they're pretty reactive. And believe me, because I used to hear it before.
We're shipping to Canada now too, which
shipping to Canada, which is good for the titles that we have rights to over there. So we're seeing a good increase in that. There may be a summer fear sale coming this summer. Maybe. I don't know. But, people asked if we were going to have one this month. And I said, the summer's still young. So
how many more titles are you announcing for the summer? Are we all caught up on the summer stuff?
We're done with the summer. But this month, we already announced Larry Fessenden. But we will have about, we have quite a few more to announce for October. Then at Comic-Con, the second week of July, I'll be going down there at a panel, and we'll be announcing at least another 10 titles coming out through 2015, 2016. There will be something for everyone in that list. I always love it because it's like a very exciting, like people are like, they're waiting at home, they're coming to the panel, and they're just like, I don't care about anything else. Let me get right to the announced stuff.
Right to the titles.
We got to some stuff. But as far as trends and stuff, we mentioned earlier about the sort of increased a little bit of competition, which I think on a way is, I can't imagine for the other companies too, but it's almost like it's being spread out. Like, again, consumer only has a certain amount of money, and, they have to make some choices.
I know I only have so much money.
Right, exactly. I know. I look at stuff, I'm like, maybe this one and this one, I'll take a chance on this one.
Whatever. They came on a private jet, guys. I saw it land in the back of Geek Nation.
As far as going into 2016, to be brutally honest, we have a couple studios right now that we've already mentioned that we work with, and that we hope to continue working with them. And again, in order for us to do that, we do need to, strike a line between politics, business, and especially for things that we ask. If we're able to get into their vaults and stuff, we'll be able to have some more stuff.
But we still have some great titles.
We definitely do. So don't get me wrong. But
at any point in the last 2 hours, any title that we mentioned might be on those lists.
See, I can't even say that, because if I do, people will be like, I know what it is. And but maybe.
I just want to give people hope.
There is hope. We are hoping that, again, a Sony, a Lionsgate, a Warner Brothers,
we just need that one Warner Brother fan to really start pushing from inside Warner.
We're hoping that perhaps there could be internal changes there with their financial structure, their employees.
Right.
Who knows? That will sort of that will be amenable to us coming to them. Again, what also really helps is being able to say, hey, we sold this many amount of units on a title like, I hate to pick on Howling 2 again, but again, something like that. So we can go to one of the studios and say, we can do this. Here's our advance, and get those. We will be acquiring more new films. I know that is definitely an initiative for the company. The attractive thing about getting new films, the IFC ones aside, is that we can get all rights to them, which includes broadcast, digital, Netflix, streaming. And that's a very big priority, not just for our founders, but just if you think about where the business is going in general, it's going a lot digital and streaming. Now, the collectors like us, we want our physical goods, and we want to continue to give you that stuff. And
I guess new films sometimes aren't. Some collectors don't want the new film yet because it's not tried, right? They haven't even seen it,
right?
So they
it's
might
not tried,
buy it,
or they can rent it,
right?
Or it's not something that they need to have. Like it doesn't have the same beloved memory.
And I completely get. I mean, like even from a diehard collector perspective, I will immediately run out to buy Howling 2, since that's our title of the night. But something like Extraterrestrial, I watched on VOD because I hadn't seen it yet.
Well, exactly. And so people can make their choices. What we, on the IFC titles, sometimes we at least are able to say that we have some extras on there that differentiate it from just having a VOD experience, or, like the Babadook, the pop-up packaging. I would love to be able to say, Scream Factory is going to be around for another 3 years. I think it could be. I just don't know if it'll be the same as it has been for the last 3 years.
Is there any chance we could ever see, because we're moving in this direction, which is kind of what I've been leading up to all night, a Scream Factory original? Something that was developed and created, a new movie made with the Scream Factory logo on top.
It has definitely been talked about.
Because I just think you guys would be worthy in the market. I think people would respond to that well, as long as it's the right thing.
I believe there have been discussions that possibly could be part of the future of it. You know, I mean, I am really proud. I think this last week on Sunday, when we actually did get our 3-year anniversary, I posted to the fans there, you know, a thank you, a picture, and then I listed all of our titles from beginning to current. And sometimes I just look in my office because they're all stacked in a row, and I go, oh my God, we pulled this off. Cliff. I mean, like, it's an amazing feeling to be able to look at this sort of little library that really only started off with an announce of 7 films at once, and to have a sustained, like, thing that people are still excited about, people still care about, people are very passionate about, and you know, like to be able to put more. But our, you know, Cliff and I, we love the catalog. We love the older stuff. That's what we grew up on. Yeah. It's what we'll always enjoy, and it's frustrating for us sometimes when we get some of these films and talent will give us problems here, or we can't do a transfer here, or we can't do something here. And it's like, God damn it. Yeah. But yet we put it out, and, you know, we try our best.
Yeah. As somebody that occasionally helps or contributes to some of the features,
which we thank you for.
I just want to say that it's really, really hard. And everybody, including Michael Felsher and everyone that puts their heart into it, they do their best to deliver the best thing possible.
Yeah.
I only say that because you mentioned talent and stuff, and sometimes people complain like, how did you not talk to this person or that person? Trust me, we tried. Cliff, there's reasons for everything.
Cliff, why don't you just mention, you don't even have to mention the actress or the title, but, like, you know, the money.
I don't want it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
it's okay. We can infer.
Let's just say there are some times when
I had to go to the bank and take money out of my account to pay a talent today.
Yes, it's these little things that we don't really let people know in public and all that. But there are times where Anya liked and Michael Felsher, and we have some other people, Reed Kaplan, and where there will be some bending over backwards. I know I can say this personally. I have really done a lot for the Sentinel that more than I would have done on any other project. I like it, but out to the same token too, I'm like, okay, you know, there is some time and effort, and it's worth it. But, you know,
I mean, we've had some talent where we've had to hire their personal makeup person or their own hairstylist, and they were very expensive. And, you know, so there's a lot of costs that, you know, people don't even think that go into this, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when we announced the extras for Sleepaway Camp, we were up front, and they're saying, sorry, Pamela, Springsteen,
reached out to her.
She turned us down, you know. We have some other titles that are coming up that, you know, a lot of people think, oh, what is she doing these days? Or what is this actor doing these days? Well, believe me, we reach out to some of those people, and they either have moved on, or they didn't have a good experience, or they're like, you're not paying me enough money. And sometimes they ask for something like, again, it's like
unrealistic.
It's unrealistic.
Or like Shocker, you know, we can't get Peter Berg. He's a major director now. He's making movies. We'd love to get him, but
he'll come to you eventually.
But you know, in your defense, you got what's his name? Tom Lee Jones on Rolling Thunder.
No.
Mel's on Mad Max.
We've lucked out on some really. Mel Gibson on Mad Max is a huge deal. You know,
I think more people have just complained about other things about the release than the fact that we got Mel Gibson, who was willing to sit down and talk with us. I mean, it was amazing.
Where's part 2? Who has part? Who has
Warner Brothers?
Warner Brothers.
So that's again another.
And you know, we've gotten Meryl Streep for Sophie's Choice, and Alec Baldwin for The Shadow, and Miami Blues. I mean,
Jamie Lee Curtis on The Fog. I mean, come on, that was a
very hard one.
That was a very big win to get that.
Thanks to Sean Clark, who did a great job.
He did a good job on that.
It takes an army.
My last thing, educate me here, because I'm new in all these apps on my TV. I like watching stuff on my TV now. Is it a Shout Factory or a Scream Factory?
It's
app?
a Shout Factory TV app that's new.
Oh, what is that?
This?
I wish I could explain a little bit more, because we really haven't focused on a Scream Factory, but because
you're doing other things. There's a whole different department that takes care of that.
Which is on Hulu, I believe. God, I wish I could
it's on Roku as well.
It's Shout Factory TV, where you can stream movies for free.
TV shows.
We will, in next couple of months, sort of have a more concentrated Scream Factory push with titles that we have streaming rights available to be able to direct people on there. It launched, I believe, in February and had a really good response. Most of the stuff is classic TV shows right now. Herzog, some titles that we have some stuff.
That's an amazing set.
Definitely a big initiative in the company to do, but no Scream Factory TV. But there will be some stuff up there.
Excellent.
But I'm a Hulu Plus subscriber, for example. So can I find Shout Factory stuff on there? I don't know how.
And I wish I could tell you the answer. I'm not sure.
This is Ghoulies 2 all over again.
Yeah, I'm too busy watching the Sentinel over and over and over again.
Fair enough. All righty. Well, again, we always love having you guys on. Our fans love when you come on. I hope that we answered a lot of their questions.
I really, before we came on here, I promoted on our page to the fans that we wanted this to be the most candid one that we've ever done. We haven't done anything public with anybody for about a year or so. And it's partly because we've just been really busy, but also just because, we kind of felt like we've told our story, but we realized that we have a whole bunch of new fans and we have a lot of loyal fans that still want to hear a lot more about the process.
Let's put the curtain a bit.
Yeah.
Talk about what goes on and why you don't have some of these titles.
Exactly. And we think it's helpful. We hope it's helpful for people to understand, that, it isn't a snap of the fingers and voila, it's on Blu-ray. Every single title we could list in the catalog will have its, we'll have something that will be like, wow, I can't believe you were able to get through that. But
there's titles that are coming out this year from other labels that we passed on for whatever reason. And it all has to make sense business-wise for us to do certain things.
I will say
there are some titles that we didn't want to see go, but we couldn't justify what the sales would be versus, because we, like Jeff had mentioned before, we have to look at the prior DVD sales. And you got to look at the DVD sales and say, what percentage of that is a Blu-ray customer who's going to buy it.
Right.
And if you don't hit, we have to hit certain thresholds and certain, profit, margins. So there's some titles we lost that we would have loved to have done, but
yeah. And there are titles, believe me, that we project in a meeting that we say, well, we think it's going to do this amount of units. And I know both Cliff and I sometimes go, well, we hope. And some will do better, and then some will do, and then this kind of will wash out, but we'd like to see more better, of course. I will say one of the things I definitely want to say, just for anybody who's listening, who kept on this far and heard this whole thing out, thank you. But just in general, we really thank the fans. Again, 3 years, we really could not do it without you guys. You guys here, and just all the people that have supported us, whether it's, through magazines or websites or whatever like that. It's all a collected effort. So just thank you guys.
Yeah, let's put it in context. We do a horror trivia that Bekah hosts, and there's all these prizing from all these different places, but every single time the Scream Factory are treated like the prize you're aiming for.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what else I bring.
If there's vinyl, if there's poster, it doesn't matter. The thing everyone's angling for. Oh, did you get Scream Factory?
I got bitten.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
so I still have
that's
that.
big fight over.
That's great. I love it.
We'll see what happens with Stigmata, but
Stigmata. What's wrong with you?
You would.
I will say this.
I love religious horrors though. Speaking of which, what's the one with Lou Diamond Phillips. First Power.
Oh, that's a great movie.
That one?
That is on Blu-ray already through Kino.
First Power's cool.
Yeah, that's right.
I like that one.
Yeah.
No, but
Maybe I'll give it a second try, Stigma. I saw it in theaters a long time ago. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
You know what? This is what I say. This is a good way to, every time we announce something and people are like, you put out that shit.
Yeah.
I always say one person's trash is another person's treasure. One movie is, every movie that's out there is always someone's favorite movie. It doesn't matter what it is. Just always keep that in mind, because there are people that look at you Ghoulie fans and say, what the hell? And then they're like, you don't understand. It's Ghoulie. So, again.
But you guys put out Leviathan, so
she's happy.
I'm happy.
Leviathan. So Leviathan, would you say that's your favorite in the band?
I would say Lake Placid is probably my favorite. I love aquatic horror.
No, that's good. What about you? What about you?
Favorite of all the Scream Factory titles?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it'd probably be a Carpenter title, but off the top. Oh, actually, no, Slumber Party Massacre's pretty damn fucking awesome.
And I will say, Phantom of the Paradise is up there for me as well.
But I mean, to me, all your big titles are just, there's no complaining about the treatment they get. I mean, if you ever put out Ghost of Mars, I'll probably refund all of my titles.
I love Ghost of Mars. Really, give Ghost of Mars another chance. It's kind of fun.
That's the worst advice I ever took from
someone.
Oh my
God! You're gonna support on Shocker?
Yes, I will support on Shocker. The day somebody remakes Ghost of Mars, it's the end of culture.
What about you, Rob?
Oh God! I mean, I'm trying.
I know. Come on, Psycho 2 and 3. Hello.
I do love those. Yeah.
I would have gone Scanners 2 and 3 because he's like
I do love
diehard.
Scanners 3 as well. It's a great
must
release.
Be there.
Recently, I don't know. I thought you guys did a great job on Sleepaway Camp. It was nice to see.
2
I mean,
and 3.
The first one. The original,
the first one was. Yeah.
Because it was just like a new scan of that movie. And it's still just as fun.
It's really fun watching all of those 3 together. They're just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're so ridiculous.
My most pleasant surprise is Vintage is New Year's Evil, because I'd never seen it.
Yeah,
and I laughed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought it was wonderful. And of recently, obviously, I love that you guys did The Battery. I really was surprised by Gunwoman. In fact, I was so glad. I didn't realize until I finished the movie, because the third act is so bonkers. And then I noticed that the reverse art is pretty much what sums up the third act. So I immediately swapped it over for naked zombie bleeding with a gun.
Yeah, he talked about this on last week's show about how awesome it was.
How did
fun movie.
How did Life Force perform? Because that's an amazing movie.
Super performed.
Yeah, that film's just
again.
So incredible.
I was thinking about some other titles that overperformed, and Life Force was one of them, and The Burning was also another one. But Life Force by far.
Because when you watch the Cannon Dog, that's the most fun one, because it's just like them throwing buckets of money at Toby, and you're like, Steve Railsback's the lead, and they're throwing money at this thing, and he's doing these things that are huge. It's just so fun.
We watched that Cannon Doc, both Cliff and I. Oh, you haven't seen it? Wait,
you gave it to me.
Well, watch it.
I know.
It's hysterical because there's so many films in there that we have put out, and you just look at that Canon library and you go,
it's so bizarre.
It's bizarre.
It
really came at a time, and then just the fact that their crash with the Lombardo movies, which I own both of them.
I really love the Lombardo. The first one, Rico, is amazing.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking Salsa.
So I have Salsa too.
Okay, Salsa. Salsa's really good.
They're all ridiculous.
I have the Lombardo because the Lombardo has one of them's
Lombardo
nights.
has
something
Salsa.
nights. Okay.
Yes, and then there's the Forbidden Dance is Lombardo.
Right.
Okay.
You guys should be the Forbidden Label. Scream Factory, the Forbidden Label.
We officially gone way over time.
I know. I'm so sorry, guys.
So let's wrap it up. But thank you so much, guys, for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.